budget workshop to order, scheduled for Wednesday, May 19th at 6:30 p.m. It's now 6:35. Please call the roll.
Councilman DeMonico?
Here.
Councilman Lucido?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Collingfeld?
Here.
Councilman Owens and Mayor Pixley. And if I'm slower tonight, please forgive me. I'm running on a 5-hour energy drink tonight, so.
We'll move on to item 2, 2018-19 budget review. And I believe, Mr. Altemus, you had an order that you wanted to go by, so do we want to start with Carol Sterling and go from there?
Yeah, when we set the date and stuff, the council talked about, some of the smaller departments going first to kind of get them in and out, so they didn't have to, lose their whole evening. So we kind of did it in that order, even putting the fire and police at the end of it, and then Mr. Blum and I can then take it from there. So if you have questions for Carol, she's here.
All right. Did you want to give an overview or anything like that, or just?
Basically, this is a maintenance budget.
I gotta hear you. We're taping it.
Well, we're legit here, Carol. We're legit here.
This is live.
I know, but I don't want to be live. I started to say, it's a maintenance budget. It's less than it's been in the last few years because we have no capital improvements this year. So I tweaked a few things, and that's about it. So if you have any questions.
I didn't really have much for this department. Did anyone want to jump in with any questions? Because
I don't have
libraries-
any for library either.
Well, I was just curious because I had a feeling that was going to be the case. Do you have any? Are there any new programs you've been thinking about, or any that you'd? Is there anything you'd like to see new, or? I know I sent.
The budget, I mean, programming, we don't even have a line item for that. The Friends pay for it, and we change them up all the time.
Right. Yeah. No, I was.
Well, and Connect Ed, we want to get that started, but that's like really, that doesn't really cost anything.
Okay.
It's just collaborating with the schools and the cooperative, the Suburban Library Cooperative, of which we're a member, to just get it started.
Okay. And I was just asking more because I don't know all of the things that you do over there, so I wanted to learn a little more too. And that is good. And I did learn from Alyssa that the Friends pay for all the programming.
We
Yeah.
have a lot more programs for adults now, too.
Okay.
Reading club, that's becoming popular, and we added one, and that's it.
Do you have any ideas on how we could push some, like the online things? I think not a lot of people know about Overdrive or Freegal or Zenio.
Downloadable. Well, we have music, magazines, books, audiobooks. They're available on our website. Go to the website, go to Overdrive. Freegal is the music, Overdrive is the books. And now it's called, I don't know why they changed it.
Oh, it's,
RB Digital is the magazines.
oh, okay.
Does that mean it's Freegal Rock? Sorry.
No. You think it was Fraggle Rock. It's not.
It's a stretch.
All right. Well,
Somebody was working AC/DC the other day. So.
Hey, less of a stretch.
Well, we have a lot of programs, and I didn't expect to be doing this. And I thought you kind of wanted to keep the night short. Because I could list everything if you want, or I could have brought in the newsletter. But all our programs are on our website, the city website's calendar, our calendar. Certainly available in the library. We have a newsletter out every month, and the newsletter is available at City Hall and any city building that's open to the public.
all right. Thank you. Well, I guess if no one has any questions for library, we can let Carol go enjoy like the 2 minutes of sunlight left.
Or just before
Thank
the
you.
rain kicks in, whichever comes first. Thanks.
Thanks, Carol.
All right. Thank you. And And I guess we'll move on to general fund, and we'll start with Blum going over the revenues. Is that how you want to do that?
Yeah, you want.
Yeah, I'll go through some of the highlights, revenue, and a couple other topics. What you'll see, and you saw that even with the library, property taxes have a 2.1% increase this year. That's the CPI cap for it. In the general fund, that comes to $426,000. Revenue sharing is projected at a 2% increase, which is an extra $56,000.
Is there a certain page that you're,
Nope, this is just some
Just your
highlights
own
I
notes.
jotted down. We do have the court revenues still being down the $500,000 that we've seen the last couple of years. It ends up netting to, overall, revenue nets to about a $46,000 increase. Not a whole lot there. I want to touch on some of the broad expense categories. Retirement contributions are increasing $440,000, which is 15.4%. OPEB contribution is increasing $161,000, or 6.5%. And workers' comp, we have had some bad couple years, and we have a budgeted increase of $183,000, or 82% increase. Can't do much about that. There are 2 new positions in the general fund. There is an additional sergeant in the police department, and then a reinstatement of the deputy finance director in the finance budget. One of the overall themes is the union groups all have a 2% increase baked in per contract. The non-union are at 0, and part-timers are at 0. The reason for that is last year, Steve gave the non-union a 5% increase, knowing there'd be some turmoil in the months to come, and that whoever was in the city manager slot wasn't going to be thinking pay increases. So he just gave everybody 5% last July, and then it's assumed it would be 0 this year. So don't let anybody whine in your ear about it. So.
Hadn't started yet.
Oh, well, yeah. But those 3 items on the expense side that I brought up, they explain the bulk of the $758,000 budget deficit we have projected for this year. And that's really all I have as far as highlights on the general fund, and now we can just go department by department, so.
Okay, I did want to ask, regarding the non-union members, the non-union grade scale that we got had 1 page of positions. Was that the entire thing? Because it was only like 7.
Man, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the second page is just notes, I think.
Yes. I thought there were more non-union positions than there were in that, on that 1 page. That's why I was asking.
No, then, I think we go, what, 1 to 10 on the grade scale? I think,
On the scale, yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that's the whole scale.
okay. Did anyone have any questions?
Sure. One, I was in the budget message, you talked about PPT again, and I think I was confused because you made it sounds like we're losing money, but we've been being reimbursed for that as far as I
Not 100% of what we've lost.
But 90, I thought you gave us a 90, high 90s
For the
number.
first 2 years, they came in about 90%. There was a little bit of catch-up they were doing in those numbers. The way they crafted this law, you get the lower of whatever millage was in place in 2012 when they created it, or your current millage. So we will never get fully reimbursed. One thing is they did not include DDAs, so DDA isn't getting reimbursed anything. On the general fund, in 2012, we had 12 point whatever general operating mills and a 7 mil public safety. Then we did a charter change, and it's now 19 point whatever it is, I'd have to look. The 7 is now 0, so we get nothing for that. And the 12 is now 19, so we only get reimbursed on the 12, because it's the lower of whichever number. So we did get almost fully reimbursed the first 2 years, but we will not get reimbursed 100% going forward. I heard scuttlebutt that they're looking at correcting that up at the legislative level, but until that happens, we will never see 100% of that.
So what's roughly, if we were 100, between 100% and what we have then? Because I think, I don't know, I was having a hard time understanding this paragraph in the message. It says something about the loss of nearly $1 million on top of all other losses. It's nowhere near
That would
there.
be the taxable value loss, not the taxes. We're losing,
Okay,
rough number, 25,000 a year right now.
okay. Okay.
All right. I suppose we'll move on to Karen Haydet to just talk about the court and court building.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. My name's Karen. I am the Court Administrator over at the 38th District Court. I submitted the summary to the city, which pretty much indicates, for our Personal Services Director, Blum indicated our increase there is due to the 2% union contract increase. Pension, in addition to the changes made, our supplies line has gone down. Other charges has gone up a little bit, and that's due to the court-appointed attorney fees. Capital outlay obviously is gonna indicate, so we have a slight increase from last year's budget to this year's budget. Currently, the court's looking to add some additional technology to hopefully reduce the public coming into the court building. We're looking to do online probation reporting. I'll be checking some vendors out at my conference next week to see if I can have them come in and give us samples of what would be the best and appropriate and financially responsible way to get that program in. And then all the courts are moving to the e-filing, so we'll also be looking at different vendors to eventually get the e-filing up and running in our court. Circuit Court's already implementing the e-filing. If you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer anything.
This might be, I don't know if you would know this. I was just curious, is Macomb County using the e-true filing?
Yes.
Okay. Have you guys looked at that? Are you planning on, it seems like that's what all the courts
They
that I'm
have
aware
a
of.
different software as to what their main case management system is, and it isn't applicable to what our current case management system is. If it would be on JIS, then it would be applicable to it. We do have to on appeals, we do have to scan it in. I had purchased a different scanner in order to get it up to Macomb County Circuit Court on that level.
Said it, if what was on JIS, or what were you saying?
Macomb County Circuit Court is on a different case
Oh.
management system.
Oh, okay.
We're on JIS, so we're not compatible as far as the case management systems. It'd be wonderful if we either went to their system or they went to the JIS, because JIS is predominantly in the Macomb County District Courts.
All right. Did anyone have any questions related to the court?
I'm sorry, what page we on? Good afternoon, everybody.
Oh, we're just,
Where we at?
she was just giving an overview. The court starts on page 60, I believe.
We're on page 16,
60.
60, okay.
And then two of the budget line items.
Yeah, page 3 for line, or page 2 for line item.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did have one, indigent defense, is that going to, I forget exactly, is that going to cost the city more, or is the state paying for it, because they want to have better, I don't remember what the,
Director Blum and I have been working on a plan that is a requirement with the new Michigan Indigent Defense Council. They're actually wanting to pull the money out of the courts and actually make it the funding unit's responsibility. As of right now, the state has a tendency to create legislation and they don't have the funds for it. So as of right now, there's still another component of the plan that has to be done, and the state's trying to locate where they're gonna get the funds in order to cover that, as to whether or not if the $250,000 that we currently have allocated in our budget is gonna get removed from our budget and placed into the city's budget, that's kind of the unknown right now. There is supposed to be a appropriation is to refund some of that money back, but they don't know where they're gonna be getting that money from.
And sorry, Mike, but I think this reminds me of something. I think it was, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was an appeals court, a United States appeals court judge said we just need to get rid of lawyers, and then the whole court system will be a lot. We wouldn't have to. Sorry, Rich, too. I'm surrounded by them. And then we wouldn't have to worry about that because there'd be no one fighting on the other side. But I'm not advocating for that.
Necessary evil.
And then I also was wondering about the, was it Cunningham? The costs that can be imposed. You were saying that was part of the reason we're bringing in less revenue?
Yes, there's a lot of more that you have to go through the ability to pay. As before, fines and costs technically are still due upon sentencing, but as soon as an individual brings up they don't have the ability to pay, then we have to refer them out to the collections officer, which then has to sit down with that individual. And typically, the individual then has to come in with bank statements, income tax returns, what their direct expenditures are. So if they're paying a DTE bill and the DTE bill isn't in their name, then they can't claim that DTE bill as part of their expenditure. So it's a little bit more task-oriented for the collection officer, and then he picks out what the appropriate fee would be for them to come in and pay as opposed to getting that money all up front. It can be spread out over 12 months or longer, depending on what the income ratio is versus their expenditures.
So is that like a 1 or 2 year kind of lag, and then it'll be pretty even after that? Like,
As long as the parties stay compliant with the payment plan.
Okay.
When they don't, then it forces the court to kind of go through some additional hearings as far as show causing them in, which then can delay even getting that money further, because incarceration then could come into play.
And I think I read a little more into this than I probably wanted to, but I was wondering, it said like in the, what did they call it? Syllabus, I don't know the legal term. It was a summary of the opinion, I think. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology here. But it said like a court may impose costs in a criminal case only if they're authorized by statute. Are these, so these costs that we need to go to collections, are they not costs authorized by statute then? Or I think I was confused by that.
Hypothetically, the judge could assess, let's say, on a Droval license spend, I'm just gonna pick a ballpark figure, $750. That $750 encompasses a fine, a cost, a crime victim fee, and state minimum fees.
Okay.
So if they pay and there is a priority of payment that the state legislature mandates is that we always have to collect state fees before we can get to our fines and costs. So unfortunately, the state already receives their money, but typically the funding units on the back end, if a defendant isn't compliant, it may take a couple years in order to recoup that.
Okay. That makes a little more sense.
Are you guys having safety issues over there? I noticed the bulletproof doors and things that I think are going to be put in.
Yes, unfortunately, times have changed. We have a lot more fights inside the lobby, and it sometimes carries out to the parking lot. We've had to call in the police department in order to assist, especially on high-profile cases. Our building can actually get to maximum capacity, and we have to make sure we're separating individuals so that we don't have incidents. We do training with the police department as far as gun certification, taser training. We've gone through active shooter. Sergeant Cannonsman has come over, and we've done some internal training because we want to stay, since we share the same building with the police department, we want to make sure everyone kind of knows if an incident does arise, everyone knows what they need to be doing. Really, when they built that building, some of the security features, defendants are walking past like the judge's chambers, and that should never be occurring. So we have to kind of change routes and make sure people aren't walking down the hallway when we have prisoners coming to and from the lockup.
And then you said we're moving a court officer, part-time to full-time?
I put in for that, but at the last budget meeting, I believe that was turned down. I'm not saying that we don't need it. If that could be done, that would be wonderful to do. I think security nowadays should be like one of the number one issues, that employers are looking out for the employees as well as the public coming into the building feeling safe.
Now, was that part-time as in the court and like part-time with PD, or just part-time person,
It would be
period?
just a court employee not associated with the police department.
Okay. This is, I always wonder when I see part-time employees, is retention an issue with the court officer, or is that
It can
not?
be. Most of the part-timer that I have actually left the police department and came to my side. Most courts look to either hire retired law enforcement or those that are looking to get in law enforcement because they already have the training, they're already certified to handle a firearm, and they know how to de-escalate a situation should one arise in the court building.
Okay. I guess that's the case at the Court of Appeals, it's all retired MSP, yeah.
Do we have any other budget questions for the court?
I had a quick one for Mr. Blum. Were we moving that one, I think Karen pointed it out, about the witness fees? I think that would go with Mr. Albright, right, not to the court side? There was a line item for,
And that's always been part of the court's budget. It may change with the new state ruling, but it's always been part of the court budget. It's not, his budget is purely attorney fees, not court appointed. That's city attorneys versus court appointed.
but wouldn't the, okay. The court appoints the witness who, like, we appoint the,
Well, if a witness comes in at the trial, they get paid a fee, but it comes out of the court's budget.
okay.
It's, yeah, it's been that way for decades, so.
May I just clarify that? The city attorney's office, if Rich is going to a bench trial or a jury trial and he needs witnesses to come in and testify, they're his witnesses. They're not the court's witnesses,
Yep.
and the
We-
public
Okay.
perception
We
is-
send out the subpoenas. Those come
Subpoenas,
out from
yeah.
our office.
But we technically, they have to submit the subpoena to the court in order to get reimbursed from the court. But really, the misconception is they're not witnesses that the court is requiring them. The city attorney is requiring them.
I mean,
collect-
we're still paying it, but,
General fund either way.
but I just thought it made more organizational sense for sure to be the opposite, bit way.
Is that everything?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That'll be
Bill-
Ms. Van Haren, she's on vacation. But if you have some questions about building, planning, and parks, Mr. Blum and I will take a stab at it.
Well, I was curious, I guess my first one maybe is kind of a question for council too, like, since it looks like we're going to be creating the Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission, should we essentially set aside, I don't think the Beautification Commission's ever used 1,000 in a year, but set aside like 1,000 bucket for them so they can do something like the arts exhibition that we did last October or whenever it was, so that someone could be reimbursed if they buy something there, so that the commission members don't have to pull out of pocket for it.
I've always had the beautification money in the city hall and grounds because it was a catch-all type thing, so I think that's what we always have is $1,000 for the beautification. They pay for their awards and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
so if you'd like to, put 1,000 for that or something, we could place it in there.
Yeah, if I recall, I thought the last full year it was like $400 for
Yeah.
beautification or something.
Yeah, they,
buy-
as you know, they buy all the treats and stuff for their awards
Yeah.
ceremony and stuff, and we reimburse them.
I don't have a problem with that but you said there's another, you get it for beautification out of a different line item?
It's in the city hall budget, the 299 budget, so we can talk about that and just slot it in. I think we can come up with a line item to put in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, it's so small, I don't know if we'd need it included in the line item or not.
I thought I saw though a line item for beautification this year or something. I don't think I recall seeing that before, but, I don't know where,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, I just wasn't sure how.
We could actually make it the
Add
same
something.
line item and just call it,
Commission.
and just add a, call it a
Another
commission reimbursement or something like that in the city hall account.
Yeah, just operating supplies, maybe?
Yeah,
Beautification?
yeah, that's the one.
what's the number on that one?
It's under Department 299, it's 793.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially because we're gonna be starting the parks also, so maybe just increase that to 2,000 for all three of them to use that money. Because like you said, beautification usually doesn't use all of the 1,000 anyways.
Sure.
I did have a question, I'm trying to find where I have it. Is Parks the one that Director Van Herentz gets paid partially out of for salary?
Right.
Correct.
How much
Yeah.
was that, like 10,000, I believe?
758. $8,989. I have no idea what percentage of her wages that is.
What page are you looking at, I'm sorry?
On the line item detail that was sent out, it's page 9, if you have that. It's not actually in the budget itself.
I was just curious on why that is, because Parks falls under, well, I guess it falls under DPW, doesn't it, in terms of,
No, Mary's responsible for parks maintenance. That
Well, it's
does-
at least, I guess it's a change from last year, at least.
Yes.
We didn't do this last year, so why did we decide to do it this year?
Mary just decided to allocate part of her cost over to parks. Again, it all comes out of general fund. It doesn't affect the bottom line. It's just reflecting the time she spends with the parks department.
Okay.
Yeah, she's responsible for managing the J.J. Mish contract. Any parks improvements should be running through her, that kind of stuff, so.
And I saw one, it was a very small item, but there was $250 budgeted for vehicle maintenance. It sounded like that should have been, wouldn't that be like motor pool, or what would vehicle maintenance be in,
That is if an individual does not use a city vehicle and they get paid mileage.
oh,
So we just put a small amount in there. It's usually less than $100 a year because most people are using the pool cars, but there are times when one isn't available.
Or they go to some training and they take their own vehicle
Yeah.
to the training.
and then did we have, I saw, I don't know if I'm kind of mixing with things we might hit on later, because this is pavement markings question, which will be under major streets, but kind of thought community and economic development would also make sense. Were we planning on a certain project, or I was wondering, I mean, personally, I was thinking kind of what Planning Commission has mentioned, or what I've mentioned at Planning Commission about testing out something kind of like Roseville did at Utica and Gratiot, since we're doing the refuge.
Here comes the rain.
We know right when it's raining in here. The refuge islands that we're doing, doing like a road diet. They were talking about, having like local commercial and regional commercial on 9 Mile, and it'd be local where like the police department is going pretty far east, and know exactly what the planning commission would want to do, but maybe get rid of a lane or two, do bike lanes or something. Can we test something out with part of that 100,000? I was wondering, or I was just wondering if the rest of council was interested in something like that too, so that we're not doing the permanent, because if we're doing the right thing, we're doing, you're grinding the concrete down and putting the good stuff down, not just painting something on. Because 100,000 sounded like probably wouldn't get a whole lot of that sort of thing out of it. I forget what it was called, grinding it down and putting
Yeah.
the stickers down or whatever. I don't know if anyone was interested in something like that, or if Planning Commission could be interested in talking about that, or?
Well, I know Planning Commission is interested in having a joint meeting, so, which probably wouldn't be until July or later. But at that time, when we do, I think that'd be something to discuss at that time at the Planning Commission.
Okay.
And you could have that conversation before we actually even talk about putting the bid together.
Okay. Sounds good.
I almost forgot, actually. I spoke to Randy right before the meeting about this. Just so council's aware, I've asked to get some information about increasing our lighting for Christmas time around this area. I'd like to look at getting some industrial lighting to start lighting up the corridor, specifically the median of Gratiot. I think there could be a lot of value in really putting together a fantastic display so people actually come and drive up and down the avenue and maybe stop and spend some money and things like that. So just something I was thinking about, so I asked administration if there was, well, if it was possible financially first, to see if we can pursue that somehow. And that is in parks, the holiday supplies. There's $1,500 for that right now, which is not enough to do anything, so.
Yeah, and I try to pull, you know, because every year we lose lights because everybody likes to, you know, cut them. So I've got a little money set aside to replace. We've been trying to replace some of the lights because we lost so many, you know, over the years, and we just weren't putting anything in for them. So we can put, we'll put something together, give you some idea where the cost is based on lighting, decorations and that kind of stuff, and I'll give it to Mr. Cotton, and he could probably put it in a Friday report or something at that point, and if we have to make a modification or something to the budget, we can do that. But we've been trying to replace some of the lights just on the buildings. A couple years ago, we had 3 incidents where they cut the lights at the library and damaged them. Well, we didn't have that many to begin with, so we started building by building to try to put more lights and replace them, so.
I
No.
mean, I think if we were gonna do a program like that, I think even if we just added a little bit to it every year, you know, just added a little bit instead of doing it all at once.
The one thing that just found out yesterday, now we knew they had sold the community center, Rare sold the community center. Part of the Rare bylaws, charter, whatever you call it, requires that 50% of the net proceeds on that sale go back to Eastpointe and 50% goes to Roseville. The intention of administration was to recommend that money be set aside for parks improvements, which Christmas lighting could fall into that category if council chose to do that. We should have the cash in hand next week. I don't know what the closing costs were, but I'm guessing that'll be between $175,000 and $180,000 coming into the city that council can do what they wish with it. So we can either do more parks improvements or set some aside for lights or a little both or whatever. So it opens up some opportunities.
Was that included in the parks revenues?
No, this is something that just recently happened, and the money will actually come in this fiscal year. And that's where if it comes in this year and then we designate it for something for next year, then we would just have to amend the budget to add the whatever activity we're spending the money on.
I think that would probably be good for the proposal that was probably brought, what was that, 3 or something years ago by Bill Sweeney's son Brad about doing the disc golf course.
Yeah,
That
that
I
would
think
fit into
would be
that
a
one too.
Great thing for that.
I mean, I have my own opinions on it, but we don't have to necessarily discuss that right now.
I'm just throwing that out there. The money will be in our bank
I
account
think
next
she was
week.
talking about the disc golf, but
Oh, all right.
I mean, I don't think that would take up a huge chunk of that.
No, no, I mean, I just have my ideas on what I'd like to see go into our parks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I figured, and we're talking about that tonight then, right? Sarah?
And I'm saying, I don't think we need to discuss that right now. We
Right.
don't have the money yet,
Right.
so we should discuss that when we actually
It's just
have
letting you
the
know
money.
there will be funds available to do something with.
Plus, we're about to put together a Parks Commission probably and get a recommendation from
Right.
them, so.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions related to parks?
Or building, planning.
Yeah, building, planning, parks. All right, we'll move on to fire. Mr. Folkerts.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
We did have an increase in the fire budget this year. Most of it's due to contractual obligations to the employees, increases in retiree cares, increases in workers' compensation, and increased in contractual services. Mainly our big increase in contractual services this year is the Altemus. As you know, we went on Altemus last year like law enforcement has. We're still not completely up and running. Some of the outlay that we have this year in operating equipment is for continued upgrade to the facilities, 2 additional CAD computers for vehicles that we have in service that don't have them currently, and the addition of a secure link, a secure internet connection from Clemens to our building. We don't have Clemens workstations inside the fire station. We have to work on ones that are in the vehicles, so we have to have that. It was quite costly. It's $14,000 to put that secure line in, which I didn't know an internet line could cost that much.
Can I ask a question about that real
Yes,
quick
sir.
then? Because is that a requirement from Clemis or from Sarisa or?
Well, Sarisa put us on the system. All 3 law enforcement agencies were already on Clemens. That's our dispatch system, our CAD system. The fire side, us, Roseville, and St. Clair Shores Fire,
Yeah.
were on a different system. That system was no longer supported by its vendor, so the decision was made by the 3 communities to put everybody on Clemens, so the dispatchers only have to know one dispatching system.
Was that system called Try Something or?
Our old system?
Yeah. Never mind if.
Yeah, it'll pop into my head in a minute, but yeah, no, that system, I can't remember the name of the system right now, I'm sorry. But, no, that system went out last year. So it's Teresa putting us all on there. We budgeted 2 years ago to have 3 CADs, the 3 computers, 1 in each engine and 1 in the truck. Now we need to put 1 in the command vehicle, with the battalion chief's vehicle, and 1 in my vehicle. And then we need to have the workstation put in. Now, the workstation, the way that T1 line operates, that's solely Clemens infrastructure. They dictate everything. That's just like the modems you had questions about before. We
Yeah.
have to buy their product from their vendor, period, or we're not allowed to operate on the system.
Because to me, I don't understand why they are doing that, because we're talking about a $1,000 a month internet connection, right? And the T1 is the speed of it, not if it's secure or not. You could secure a dial-up modem. It can be secure. It doesn't matter how fast it is. So this is how I don't get how they're.
I'm not an IT guy, but the way that they explain it to me, that it's a physical, hard connection from our station all the way back to Oakland County. Dedicated line. That's why it costs so much. I'm honestly, I'm not an IT person, but I know, and the police department would be much better to comment on, because they've been with Clemens a lot longer. They are very, very restrictive of the equipment
Eric starts
and the
looking down.
systems that are allowed to operate because of security. It's really quite the lockdown system.
So who would we pay this $1,000 a month to though? Is it to
Clemens.
To Clemens?
Yes, sir, to Clemens.
It's not to internet service provider.
No, sir.
That seems okay. I guess I don't understand how that works then either, but that just seems crazy to me. As I think you think it seems crazy also.
Yeah, I say I'm not an IT guy. We have the physical computer. We've had it for a while.
Yeah.
It's at the workstation. When we went to connect it, that's when they told us, yes, now you have to have this $14,000 connection to connect it to us. So
Maybe I'll
we've
give
been
them a
waiting-
call.
Pardon me, sir?
Said maybe I'll give them a call then.
Yes, we've been waiting a year to get it because I didn't have the money in last year's budget, and I was not gonna make an amendment. I waited to this year's budget.
Okay.
I had one question about a line item.
Yes.
It was 709-200 Fire Command. I noticed it went up like significantly.
Yes, it did. And if you look, your firefighters went down. What happened was with this bargaining agreement starting July 1st of last year, if you look at the fire department flow chart, the organizational chart, you'll see that last year you had 5 firefighters in each shift, a lieutenant and a captain. The command structure was changed to collective bargaining. They brought back the sergeant's positions that were lost in, I believe, 1998. We lost the sergeant's positions. And the captain was, in title only, was changed to battalion chief. That's an internal thing with us and the other departments. There was no pay difference there. So now you have a battalion chief, a lieutenant, and a sergeant, and 1 less firefighter. So the sergeants were given the old incremental in between firefighter and lieutenant through collective
Okay.
bargaining. So our command costs went up, but then we also went down on the firefighters. Overall, yes, it is an increase.
All right.
Yeah, we noticed the increase in fire command, but not the decrease. in
Yeah, no,
fire
I didn't pay attention to the decrease part, like.
There are times now when I do have more bosses working than pikemen, so yeah, it is a little odd, but that was a matter of collective bargaining, and I was not involved in that. Some other things that were placed into the capital outlay for this year was replacement of our extrication equipment. At this time, our extrication equipment is pushing 20 years old. It's hydraulic. The new extrication equipment is electric. One of the problems that we're having with the older extrication equipment is modern cars. With the increased use of high-strength steel, our old jaws of life don't cut it. Literally, they don't cut the new high-strength steels that are being used. That's only going to increase with the gas mileage standards, have gone to different constructions with the vehicles, the aluminum vehicles, to make the safety. They put more high-strength steel in the safety zones, so we do need to upgrade the tools. Also, there was a request for replacement of our monitor defibrillators. That was actually on last year's budget. It was moved to this year's budget when we went into the radio project, which at this time is still ongoing.
How's the condition of the fire truck? Because that's for next year, I think, 1 year out, we're looking at replacing that, aren't we?
The ladder would be the next vehicle you'd have to replace. That is a 1998. We just last year had $65,000 worth of refurbishment done at the manufacturer. That should, with proper maintenance, get us to a 25-year lifespan on that, which would put that vehicle then, well, 25 years would be 2020.
178 at the bottom, or at the top. It's actually 2021, the platform truck comes into. Yep.
So you're looking at 2021,
Yeah, how,
you're looking at probably replacing a ladder and an engine, because they were spaced 5 years apart, 6 years apart. So within 1 year, you're gonna be probably replacing an engine and a truck. That truck that we currently have in 1998 was $500,000. Ballpark price on that vehicle when we had it down for service is $1.1 million to replace.
and this cost in here that we're looking at just down the line is not replacement, it's just replacing parts, like the engine and the, ladder?
No, in 5 years, you're looking at replacement,
okay.
correct.
So wait, you said both at once, though?
Yes, because you have truck one, which is the ladder truck.
Yep.
1998. And you normally get 25 years out of a truck.
Yeah.
Then you usually get 20 years about on an engine. So you're at that 2024 with engine one. So you're with a year or two, you're going to be replacing
Okay.
2 vehicles.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much.
And as a side note, to support another department, yes, the court needs security. I do spend a lot of time over there, and yes, it needs security.
All right, we'll move on to police and drug forfeiture, Acting Director Kaiser.
Good evening. So many of the changes, increases in the budget are things that are out of my control. such as pensions, other post-employment benefits, leases for equipment, so Clemis, our in-car camera system. The purchase of the equipment is the inexpensive part. The maintenance agreement is what really costs us money. So that provides us support, and if you don't buy the maintenance agreements, the products stop working. Kind of like your phones, your iPhones, cellular phones, without the proper maintenance and software updates, they stop working. But that is minor. The big one.
Oh, could you turn on is the microphone not on?
That's better.
Isn't that the always-on mic, though?
Yeah, he's just not close enough to it, so.
Oh, okay.
It's on now. I have asked to add another position to the police department. I have asked for a sergeant position. Here's my summary on that. A community relations supervisor. So in my vision, this is someone I can assign supervisory duties to, someone to supervise the Records Bureau and handle FOIA requests. FOIAs are a big part of the records operation. Currently, I have the detective sergeant doing that, and that takes away from him supervising cases and the detectives. I would use this community relations supervisor to initiate community policing programs. So he would be free from road patrol assignments, answering runs, supervising prisoners, supervising officers, where he could do these community relations programs, block groups, neighborhood watch groups, attending PACE, attending the Eastpointe Community Action Coalition, being a point of contact for our schools, in addition to our part-time juvenile officer, for more involvement in school and school security. The Hope Not Handcuffs program runs itself basically, but provide supervision over that, and a program to deal with the mentally ill. The number of runs that we have dealing with the mentally ill are increasing every year. And many of our use of force situations result from dealing with the mentally ill. So there is a training program that I've instituted at the police department through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. He would be a trainer in this. He would train our current staff members, train new staff members, and be a liaison with the Macomb County Community Mental Health. So that is my vision for that, if it fits within the budget.
This was a full-time position?
It is. It is a full-time supervisory position.
So there, are you asking for two positions, one additional sergeant, and then also the community relations supervisor?
I had initially asked for two positions. The officer position was removed from the budget in the city manager budget hearing.
Okay, so that I understand, when we're looking at like this is the request, it's not necessarily what the budget numbers reflect?
Did we make any
Does that make sense?
changes?
Now, this should be the budget numbers unless council chooses to change anything.
So that includes the community relations supervisor, right?
Correct.
Yeah. But doesn't include the other one that didn't? the
No,
other
that was
position.
removed during discussions, yeah.
We would have to, for the final product, update our write-ups to make sure we reflect how you guys want to present
Yeah,
it.
that's what I was a little confused about, because I always thought these sections here were the proposal from the city manager, but it sounds like it's just the request, and then later the city manager will,
We wanted, yeah, well, we wanted to make sure that you saw what they were requesting, just in case you had a separate opinion than what we had. And to make sure that, you know, the write-up followed what he had presented to us. We made the numbers match what we approved. So, and I think they represent the different levels, right?
What do you mean different?
Where, whether we took the number out or not on the line
Correct.
item.
Right.
Oh, you have, I think, maybe something different than what was emailed.
Mine's printed out differently, that's the only difference.
Because I
have
do,
the same numbers, it's just I have different numbers I work with.
oh, you have 2 years back, I see.
Yeah, if you saw the, department head proposed, the, command number would be a little higher.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask. I think last year or the year before, we did have a column of the requests and then the city manager's proposal,
Okay.
which I think is useful to see because I think, well, when I was reading this, I was reading what was in this book as if it were the proposal from the city manager. Okay, that makes it easier for me to understand some of the discrepancies.
Yeah, my printout, I work a little differently with.
I do have one
Numbers.
question.
Go ahead.
So is it necessary for this person to be a sergeant? There is no way to have like a regular, like police officer level handle the things that you're requesting them to do?
That is an excellent question, and there's been much debate about that in the police department. By adding the supervisor position, that person could be assigned additional administrative tasks, with personnel investigations being one of them, that we could not assign to a patrol officer. I'm going to try to make the community policing work whichever way I can. If I had an extra officer, it would be my preference to assign them to a narcotics enforcement team, whether federal, state, or local, because right now we do not have as many resources as we would like to investigate drug crimes in Eastpointe. Some of these investigations are very complicated. We had a 3-person narcotics team several years ago that we lost when we lost our employees. I am not discounting the importance of community policing, which is also essential. We're just being asked to do many, many tasks with a lot fewer people than we had in the past. Stop me if I'm off topic. This also leads me into a problem we have and the fire department had with hiring and retention of officers. We need some incentive to bring them in, and we need some way to retain them. They need, some officers are happy patrolling in our 5 square miles for 25 years, but many of them, people we like to hire, have aspirations to do other things, whether it's a special assignment as an officer or an ability to get promoted and do a different type of work. So we need to offer something to retain people. Our friends at the Warren Police Department came up with an ingenious idea where for a short time, if you applied, they would hire working officers at the same year rate that they were leaving. So if we had a 4-year officer here, they could go to Warren and get the 4-year Warren rate, shortened field training program, and fall right in line without some of the hassles that are involved with your first year in policing. It's really hard to compete with that.
Well, what would that
With this
entail if we did that? What's the,
financial impact,
yeah,
Mr. Blum and I have not discussed that. We discussed the idea of it, but we have to start somewhere. So adding a position, the ability of an officer, one of our officers with 5 years or more, the ability to get promoted, and then have this position where we could assign administrative tasks, the director or myself, and have them supervise the records unit, which takes away from my detective sergeant from supervising the detectives and the number of cases they get. They get a very large number of cases assigned every month. We have fewer people, but the workload has not slowed down at all. And in fact, the seriousness of the cases that we handle has increased, or they're more serious than when I started in 1995. When we would get a call of shots fired, we'd get shots fired calls in 1995, it was firecrackers. Well, now when we get these calls, it's gunfire. We had one on Dale, the shooting on Dale the other night, that someone was waiting for a citizen who came home from a club that he was managing and ambushed him in his driveway. So we need to investigate those properly. That takes manpower and man hours. We need a sergeant that can devote time to that. So removing the records burden from him, assigning it to another supervisor would help me in that case. And because records supervision wouldn't take his entire time, we have the community policing aspect.
So what you're saying is, instead of hiring a regular police officer, that sergeant could do more as a sergeant than a regular police officer. So it's like beginning a person to do 2 jobs instead of 1, pretty much. Is it something like that?
Yes, this would be a utility supervisor that I believe would benefit the organization in more ways than an additional officer could.
Well, since you got denied the additional officer, we using the sergeant will help with 2 jobs that 2 positions that you couldn't get approved by the city manager, pretty much.
Yes.
So, okay. And so most of the duties that the detective, you were saying, is doing right now would be shared with that sergeant that a regular police officer couldn't do?
Correct.
Okay.
And you're 1 short right now anyway, because you're acting as director,
We are
right?
missing a director. We are currently down 2 officers, and we have another officer retiring at the end of the month. So we'll be down, I guess, a total of 4 positions by the end of May. We have another officer retiring at the end of October.
So I think we should implement this Warren program, is what that sounds like.
Well, I would depend on the
That might be
financial cost of it.
Well, the retention, it's that versus retention, I guess, right? If we hire someone and train them and they leave, that's expensive
I mean,
too.
that would be a union contract issue, wouldn't it, in terms of how much someone comes in making?
Yes.
There is a clause in the patrol section that allows them to be given, let's say, credit for prior service and be brought in at a rate other than a starting pay.
Is that at the city manager's
At the
discretion?
city manager's discretion, correct.
Okay.
And
I
yeah,
read that a long time ago.
Yeah, and we've done that before. But yeah, our biggest issue is our new hires come in and they get a 401 with a small defined benefit pension, and then they look at these other places that still have full pensions. And not sure why they don't like their 401s, but they don't. I guess they just don't want to have to manage their own finances. But that is one of the biggest draws, to leave Eastpointe and go somewhere else.
I guess
It's not our pay scale, it's the benefits.
yeah, the 401's pointless if your years don't go with you. Then, well, not pointless, but there'd be more of a point to it if you can move around with your years of service. Then, right?
Yeah.
This is not entirely about fire, but it was something I wanted to bring up at some point tonight. I had emailed Mr. Blum a example from another budget that laid out the positions at the beginning of different departments or funds, which is similar to what we have in our statistical area. And I believe that Holland had this, Mr. Cotton had the same thing when he was in Holland. I would like to see that moved over into the budget for 2 reasons. One, I believe the one I sent you, the way it's worded is, this department our department head department is authorized to fill this many positions, and then also had the pay scale on it. We have all that information, but in different places.
Mm-hmm.
The pays in the union contracts, the amount of personnel's kind of listed in the budget. And it just kind of gets a little confusing. I think it'd be a little more clear, and it would prevent prevent administration from moving positions around in council, not really knowing when one department's growing and one's shrinking. I don't think that's a problem that we're having right now, but it's just kind of a way to keep everything very transparent, easier for us to understand, but also makes it easier for residents to understand. So this kind of goes with that, listing out the positions and, you know, what's authorized to be spent in that department on personnel. Because maybe if we're down a few officers, maybe it could be an option to authorize less for officers and like more money for a sergeant. If that would make sense, if you think that's where the money's needed more.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense, what I'm even suggesting?
Well, so if we're currently budgeted for 28 officers, police officers, and I would never recommend decreasing that number. We have to keep the road staffed with a minimum number of police officers so we can assure safety to the officers and the public and timely service that people at Eastpointe have come to expect from the police department. So positions historically have been unfilled. I can remember, yeah, recently we had all 28 officers for about 6 months until there was a retirement or someone left. That has been going on my entire career here.
That was the only reason I thought that might be a solution, is because I know that we're always looking to fill, and we're below capacity. So it was just a thought, but
But if we were to do that, then I feel like, okay, let's say we cut down and we went, let's say we have 26 officers right now,
Yes.
right? So then I feel like we cut 2 of those positions to stay at 26, and we'd end up with 24, because we'd always be like lagging 2 behind regardless, like trying to catch up, you know? So I don't think that it would work the way we would intend it to.
okay, were there any other questions for?
Do we still get Narcan via grants, and
Yes.
we still have enough of that?
Yes. So we routinely research grants. We have grants to pay for bulletproof vests, and Narcan, other equipment we have to buy. So modems for the cars, for Clemis, so it all works. But the current administration in Washington has slowed down the releasing of that money. So the money that we were awarded in 2017, we still have not received. They sent us a letter saying that we should go ahead and spend it in anticipation of getting it, but I'm a little leery about that.
I think Mr. Blum is too.
So grants have slowed down for police.
Puts a new
Surprising.
definition of checks in the mail 2 years later.
I believe there's a code enforcement officer. Are those usually under the building department, or are they enforcing different?
Yeah, they're,
Different codes.
Okay,
we'll call it road code.
Yes, anything on a public street, our code enforcement officer would enforce. Private property is the building department.
Then I know we've talked about in the last couple of years body cameras. I know there was a whole thing with the Snyder administration, I think, was looking at something. I think it was pretty confusing to me. Are we, and the Macomb County Sheriffs, though, use them, or we're going to, or?
Sheriff's Department does have them. We were hesitant at first because there was some outrageous legislation being proposed.
That's what it was.
Very anti-police if the camera didn't activate or an event wasn't recorded. It instructed a judge or jury to discount the officer's testimony and give more weight to the defendant, which is just outrageous. So it seemed better to not have them. And then, of course, the concern now, the body cameras themselves are not a big expense, but the maintenance agreement and the storage is outrageous. And I have not done enough research on cloud-based storage to see if that is worth it and what the security issues are there.
Well, and FOIAs. The FOIA requests are ridiculous with the dash cams, and that just gives more data that somebody has to go through and fuzz faces out and all that fun
That is
stuff.
what our Detective Sergeant Merlot does. He has to go through car videos and redact things that are personal identifying information, juveniles, anything that has to do with the law enforcement information network, like driving records and warrants, if they're with the fire department, anything related to medical conditions, he has to blur that all out before he can release these, and it just takes hours of his time.
What does the sheriff's department do?
I'm not exactly sure. I think they probably have their own person. The state police have a unit that's dedicated to that. They have a trooper who's also a lawyer who reviews the requests, and then they have personnel, maybe civilian personnel, I'm not sure, who go through and edit out the videos.
Do the troopers use body cams?
They have some form of camera. I'm not sure which. I don't know, and I don't know if it's statewide
Okay.
or they're experimenting at different posts in different parts of the city in their districts, different parts of the state.
I know there was a change in the FOIA fee calculation laws recently. Are we unable to recapture the actual costs?
So that we're going to re-implement. That is on my task list of sending over fees to post on the website. Mr. Duchesne wanted us to discontinue charging all fees because the way they have written the law is we can only charge the hourly rate of the lowest paid employee in the department that does the FOIA. So while Sergeant Merlo is the only one that has access to these videos and does the editing, we can only charge the rate of the part-time records person who is in that unit to recapture.
You can't.
Charge for the first 15, is it 15 or 30 minutes? 15, we can't
Well-
charge for the first 15 minutes. It's a very complicated law.
You can't read that as the detectives department and not the police department?
Well, we could try anything. We of course, don't like to take shortcuts in the police department.
Rich? No.
I was gonna say, we'd find out quickly.
Because there are significant civil penalties for overcharging or not delivering these in the 5 or 10-day period,
very
denying things that shouldn't be denied. There's
Okay.
My
very
response
cumbersome.
was, what department has the highest paid, lowest paid employee? And have them handle all FOIA.
It's got to be the city council department.
That's true.
All right, did we have any other questions related to police and the forfeiture fund?
No?
All right, thank you very much.
you.
And I believe now we will just move on to city council. Mr. Altemus?
Okay, let me see if I can flip to it. Major changes, which are not really major. I did this year, because everybody seems to be really, really interested in going to the MML conferences and stuff, I budgeted for everybody to go both conferences. And I went out to try to figure out where they were at, so I could have some estimate of room charges and stuff. And I've also built in the increase on the salaries that were approved. I think they also, when they approved the salaries the last time the board met, they had a 2-year increase, one year, one another. So that's all been built into it. So outside of that, everything else is pretty much status. I mean, it's not a lot of line items to work with, so.
What is miscellaneous cover?
The miscellaneous is the water and stuff that we provide you folks and anything, any reimbursements that might come back in. But for the most part, it's purchasing some of the water that we buy.
This year it includes the cost related to the city manager search.
Okay.
Actually, I should be boycotting our current water. We should buy different.
All right. With no other questions, we'll move on to the city manager's office.
Okay. Don't know that I actually made any major changes. One of the biggest items, really the only real big item, which is not really big, is I'm budgeting for two of us that would be included in the City Managers Association and the ICMA Association, both of us to be able to go to the conference. And I've always budgeted for the city manager to go to the MML conference, so. Otherwise, I didn't make any changes. Same, pretty much across the board.
I just have one quick question. For the uniform and clothing allowance, I thought we eliminated that.
I think that was for
Clerical.
clerical.
It's taken out. It's still in the admin rules and regs, which hasn't been addressed. So that'd be Lori and Linda.
Is that page,
The 3.
oh yeah, right here.
That is something that I think, separate issue, the administrative rules and regs, we have to visit soon, or should, because we normally do it after we ratify contracts. So,
Yeah, we were gonna bring it, or let whoever the new city manager was, take a look at it to, let them look at it and make changes as they see fit.
all right, I'm not on the right page, but is city man, that include an IT consultant in that?
The IT is in the city hall. That's in the 299 count.
Okay, it was just, I think it was just under the structure of who, answers to the
Yeah, I
city
mean-
manager.
On the line
Oh.
items, it's under City Hall, but in here I can see
Okay.
Yeah.
it's under
well,
City Manager.
I got you.
And supervisor would be,
That's Mr.
Good job.
Malucci.
okay.
One thing I would like to ask is, this was put together before negotiations for a new city manager, and we still kept the 107 of the previous city manager, and I know you guys were talking a little bit more. This would be a good time to increase that budget if the intent is to come in at a higher level, or we can just do a budget amendment
I was gonna
later.
say, can't we just amend it when we?
We
We
can,
can't give away our hand.
Yeah.
that's fine.
If we decide-
It is true, a city manager's gonna look at our budget, so.
Oh, they all do.
Oh, yeah.
They
Or
want to
we-
know what your structure is and how sound your budget is, so they will check, they do check that.
Or if we put it in there, we know they looked, then it'd be,
Yeah,
if
the
they
first
didn't even
offer is
notice,
that.
yeah.
All right, do we have any other questions for?
Sure, I had one thing that it's probably more of a asking the rest of council. I think over these last few years, I thought it'd be good if we had some sort of, I don't know if it's a contractor or an employee or how it's structured, but some sort of different position for HR, for human resources that is not the city manager. I think we should structure that differently.
Well, you gotta take a look, because that's structured by your charter.
Oh, okay.
The city manager is spelled out as being the human resource director, so
And they can't just delegate that?
they can reassign if they wish, but at this point, it's actually the city manager who is also the city, that's one of the things too, is there's the city clerk, human resource director, and the city manager, as I am assistant and deputy city clerk. It's all charter language. Now, they can sign the task if they wish, but I don't know if they can actually assign the title. That would have to be something to look at.
I mean, I do think council would have the authority by ordinance to create a department if they wanted to, but ultimately, I think it would end up on the city manager's desk, because they would have to sign off on kind of like employee actions.
Right, and I kind of like, especially with the way we're set up, having the city manager doing the hiring, because they're gonna, I want them to go directly to city manager, because that's who we go to. So if we have an issue, you know what I'm saying, we would go to the city manager, I wouldn't want another middleman in there doing the hiring.
No, not for hiring, I guess. Sorry, for grievances or for any issues in the workplace is what I was thinking.
Well, there's usually, the hierarchy is department head, and then it moves its way through the system based on the
Are you-
collective
Right.
bargaining.
You-
Well, your concern is if they have an issue with the actual city manager.
Oh, yeah, or I'm just trying to think of how it was structured at CompuWare, yeah, I'd probably go to my boss first, but if you have an issue with your immediate supervisor or the city manager or however many people could be between you and the, you know, you're not gonna go to the CEO of CompuWare or like, for, an HR issue or something, so it doesn't seem like the right structure to me.
I think the only employees that actually it affects are administrative rules, the ones that fall under the administrative rules and regs, because the union contract employees can file grievances. So there is a third party advocating for them, I guess.
Well,
But
and even the administrators that are non-union have the civil service established that they can appeal to, which is a separate body that's actually supposed to support them.
Have we ever had a grievance at the Civil Service Board before?
Oh, yes, since I've been here, I've handled at least 3 or 4 occasions that it's been to the Civil Service Board.
actual grievances, are they filed directly with the, so how does it happen?
Yes, they can file it directly with the board if they wish. In a lot of cases, a couple cases, they were union driven, so they filed one, you know, as a union grievance and then took it to the Civil Service Board. But yeah, they can actually file directly too.
Then maybe we should have a clear understanding at least. Can you,
Send out a memo.
seems like,
Well,
a memo or
on-
something.
Well, I'd
On
ask.
this,
Go ahead.
sorry. On this particular issue, I actually do like the idea of letting employees know, especially the administrative, the non-union ones, because I think they might not have that information. I didn't realize that they could appeal to the Civil Service Board. But I think that would be appropriate as an administrative order, which might be most appropriate from the new city manager, or from Ryan Cotton if he felt very strongly about it. But that's, to me, seems like that would be,
Well, and that's spelled out in the administrative rules and regs on that they can apply to that. But my request would be if there's changes to the structure of the city manager's department, I would just like the new city manager, whoever that may be, to have that say. So I just request that. But that each in the admin rules, it does indicate that, and trust me, the staff knows.
Is there a way to have a separate clerk and just hire a clerk? Because I know you said before you have like a dual job. Is there any way to hire
Well, Lori in our office does handle the personnel and the purchasing side. That's what she does. So she works with both of us. So she'll handle, and she actually works with me on the Civil Service Board too. So she'll work with the city manager to handle any personnel issues, contract negotiations and such. And then she also works with me on the other issues. So we do have somebody in our office that does do that.
Okay, so do we have someone that knows, like, the clerk part? Because I think you're the only one who does that, right?
Well, the
Do we have
city
a
clerk,
backup?
the city clerk is a different story, but as the charter's set up, I am the deputy, the city clerk is the city manager. So if you have a city manager in place and once they're certified by the election bureau as being a clerk, then that's my backup at that point. There is no structure to have anybody underneath me as the deputy city clerk.
I thought the structure was city manager, assistant manager, and clerk. It put an "and" in it. So it wasn't a dual job, it was 2 jobs.
No, it's one job.
It is? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the charter is very specific on those duties.
Okay. So you're saying you're the only one who know how to do it, right? That's what you just said, right?
The
In a
clerk,
clerk position.
currently, yes.
So we'll just say, Lord knows, we don't want nothing to happen to you. But just say you get sick or you're out of town or emergency comes, who else knows how to do that?
Well, my clerk staff knows how to run an election.
Okay.
The part that comes in is how the state looks at you and who's the one signing, the documents. And that's where the certification as the deputy city clerk. I become the authority. If an emergency happened and you had yesterday's election and I was in the hospital, you would be fine. The election would go on with no problems with that. They would understand in the emergency situation and go on. But for their purposes, they want, the clerk, the deputy, and then you have your election workers or your staff.
Okay, because I thought other cities had separate clerks.
Some do.
Okay, why don't we?
Charter.
The charter?
Yep.
Oh, we,
No, so say though you weren't going to retire a year from now and you're retiring now while we have no permanent city manager, then what is?
At that point, if you were going forward with that, then we would take a look to see if we could bring in somebody on a temporary basis that, that they would look at, or work with the county to handle some of that too.
So no one else in the clerk's office can become a
They
certified
they
clerk
could
or
go
whatever the title
forward,
is?
but the problem is, it's the distinguishing of the clerk and the deputy city clerk. All my staff has the same training. We all go to the same
Right.
election training. Everybody is trained, if we had an issue, we would then ask the state for advice on how to handle that, and then go with that advice. We could also bring in a retired clerk to help out if they really felt that you wanted somebody to sign the documents.
I guess to me, it just seems more like the police department where Mr. Kaiser wants, if people are interested in doing new things or, keeps them involved or interested. I didn't know if that would help keep someone interested in the clerk's office, but it sounds like technically we can't do that then.
Well, again, all my staff is trained. We all go to the same training, so we make sure that if something does happen, we're all up to speed.
So what is the difference then? I think I'm confused.
Yeah.
What is you said you're the
You're like a
only
licensure?
certified clerk.
I'm
What's
the one
what's
that has
mean
gone
then?
to the certification that the state puts on for elections. I have a piece of paper that says the Election Bureau acknowledges my,
So why doesn't someone else in the clerk's department just do that and get the fancy piece of paper?
well, we could send them up to do that at any time. They only offer it a couple times a year, but most of the time, they're wanting just clerks and deputy clerks to go through the training. Because there's such a changeover, as township clerks lose elections, most of that training is put forward just for the clerk and the deputy city clerk.
Okay.
so now, because I'm thinking like if we can give that job to the supervisor, right? We can give that to Mr.
Our city
Marucci.
manager will take over as clerk when we hire a city manager, and then Randy would go back to deputy city clerk. I think the ideal,
I technically am the deputy city
Yeah.
clerk, so I don't change titles.
okay, yeah.
In this case, because I don't have to.
So you're saying you want to have a third city clerk? Like a third
We only have
person?
one, that's him.
Well, we will have two when we hire a city manager.
Okay.
They will become the city clerk.
Yeah, the city manager will be required to go to that
Okay.
training.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, once
That's where I
this,
got lost.
once you hire one and it becomes knowledge that the state knows you have one, they will
Okay.
force the issue like they did with Mr. Duchesne and I,
Okay.
both at the same time. And then you got your hierarchy in place.
Okay.
All right, do we have any more questions on that? That was city manager's office, right?
Kind of a combination
Yeah.
thereof.
Moving on to finance, Mr. Blum?
Yes, the biggest change in finance is the addition, or the reinstatement, if you will, of the deputy finance director position. We've known for a while that we've been shorthanded, and in December, when I was out with the eye surgery, they approved almost fatal to the department, not me. And it's, my accountant would not be capable of stepping up and taking over the role. And even just looking at succession planning that, 5 years from now, I could be retiring, walking out the door. And right now, we currently have nobody that could step in and do it. And it would be best to get somebody competent in now that can take over some of the workload and then be prepared. You know, if I'm out, they can cover council meetings. If I retire, they step into the position and replace themselves. That's really the biggest change. But it's a need that's been talked about for a number of years, and it's finally time to pull the trigger on it. Even with the addition of that position, the finance budget is still below the 2012 expenditures. We're the only department that will still be below the 2012 numbers. So,
Can this not be the accountant can't be the,
if
Or
they have
would
the
it-
skills to do it, yes. But the particular individual in there would not be competent enough to step up to that position and take on the extra workload, and certainly would not be able to take on a finance director role at any time in the future. We've slowly scaled back the position. I mean, we at one point had a finance director, deputy finance director, plus a chief accountant and a finance secretary. We took the deputy position and scaled it back to controller, then we scaled it back to accountant, and started taking job duties away so that we could lower the pay scale as we were cutting expenses. We eliminated the chief accountant role and the financial secretary roles altogether. They don't exist anymore. They may on the pay scale, but they don't exist in the budget or in reality. So it's really just a matter of getting another competent body into the department.
so how many part-time folks do we have? We have one you have under finance. And then 2 part-time cashier clerks.
I have to find my write-up, but we have, in the finance budget directly, we have the payroll clerk, the accounts payable clerk, a clerk that does, taxes and billings and a bunch of other miscellaneous activities. And then I have finance director, accountant, and then I do have a part-timer currently working, just helping out with some miscellaneous activities. He will eventually be going off to college, and I treated it as an internship for a year, but I expect him to be gone here in another couple months. I have some additional cashiers and water billing clerks that work for me, but they're charged to the water sewer department because that is their function in life is water billing.
Their function in life?
From 7 to 5, Monday through Friday.
It's a passion.
So wait, we have 6, well, 2 are part, I don't know, I'm looking on page 79 in the budget. 6 people that are dedicated to water and sewer, and then only
Correct.
7 otherwise?
Yep.
Isn't a lot of it automated? What, I guess,
Oh, I wish it was. No, I mean,
I don't know how we got 7 people just doing,
Water bills.
well, yeah.
I mean, we've got one that handles the calls that come in for, my water's not working, I got a sewer break, it's called administrative function, if you will, that handles those types of activities. They handle the SLAP program, arranging repairs, that kind of stuff. There's another individual that's solely dedicated to the water billing activity. You would think it'd be simple, we take a monthly read and create a bill, but it isn't that easy. There's a lot of payment plans that have to be tracked. We've got the RAP program, we've got, we get the bad MTUs, and we got that plan where they can pay it off over a certain number of years. So there's a lot of activity that goes on there, as well as all the phone calls that come in. And then there's a third full-time clerk that, they pretty much answer phone calls. I mean, the phone rings constantly, usually when water gets shut off, but there's a lot of calls coming in then. But we just have constant questions that come in all day long. So there's 3 full-time clerks, 2 part-time cashiers that are charged directly to water sewer. The majority of our activity at the window is water billing. You know, we get taxes, it's 2 bills a year. Water, it's 12 every year. So we kind of allocate the cost around.
Well, I'm just wondering, because, you know, Mr. Kaiser was hoping for another police officer. Why now another deputy finance director, especially when I guess, well, originally I think the budget message said we were gonna have like a $450,000 deficit, and now it's like $750. I think at least that's what it said something lower in the budget message.
We
Wait,
got
is
the
it,
updated.
is it that,
We got the updated thing.
You know, there's only
Right.
been one that's been sent out. It's 758,000, I believe.
492.
oh, and this, in the original budget message, it said like,
In the write-up.
the write-up, it said 450 or something. It said a different number, for sure.
Yeah, but we received this, I'm saying we got a copy of it today, you should have it.
No, I get that
Oh,
part.
well,
I'm
you
just
did,
saying, it's, since, the deficit's even another 300,000 than when the budget message was written, I guess, unless the budget message wasn't updated, but I thought I checked last year's, and it's not just like a leftover number from last year. So why is this the year to bring in another position, I guess, is my question.
Like I said, it's been talked about for a couple of years, and me being out in the month of December was kind of the tipping point. The department's still recovering from that, and there's just not the capacity of the staff to pick up that type of activity.
What was the pay on this position?
It's budgeted at 85,000.
Yeah, so that's a lot. It can't be a different pay grade?
That's actually the midpoint for the pay grade on that job.
No, right, I mean, with a different title, I mean, like a different,
Like an assistant.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we had at one point called it a controller and dropped it down a level. The idea is getting a quality person in here that will eventually be able to take over my role. You don't want to be last minute trying to run out and, I mean, look at the trouble we have with a public safety director. You can't have these positions vacant for long periods of time. And it's just better to have somebody that's already here, knows the city, knows the job, that can just step in.
On the pay grade, is the title of the job Deputy Finance Director?
Correct.
Okay. Because there was the increase in supervisor non-union, and I was wondering if was related to the Deputy
Correct.
Finance Director.
Right. Both the accountant and the deputy finance director would fall into the supervisory line item.
Okay. And that is an $85K difference.
Yep.
I have one quick question. Like in the historical staffing levels, page 231, it says that we have an accountant right now, and we also have a part-time accountant?
That's my part-timer, yeah.
That's the one that you were talking about that's gonna be leaving?
Yeah.
So you don't plan on refilling that position?
I might. I mean, he graduated from East Detroit High School last year, and he's been working here about a year now.
So he's not an actual
no.
accountant? He's not an actual accountant?
No, it's a made-up title. It's a part-timer.
Okay, 'cause I just wanted to make sure, because I mean, that's the difference in pay, if it's a part-time actual accountant, and that's
Yeah.
why I was questioning if we needed both.
Yeah, no, he's $11 an hour or some ridiculously low amount.
Do you remember how long ago we contracted out assessing? That was like 2 years?
I think it's 2 years ago.
Roughly.
What happened to the employees that were doing assessing at that time?
One actually took another job with Shelby Township, which was the impetus to contract it out instead of trying to hire somebody. We did let one individual go who was in their probationary period when we did the contracting out. And that was it at the time, wasn't it? I think we had a part-timer that actually transferred into finance.
The
There was only two
full-time
full-timers.
clerical got redistributed.
Yeah, because we had openings elsewhere, so we just shuffled around the leftover individuals. But yeah, one left, one was terminated, and two were transferred to other slots.
The hard part with assessing is that level of assessor you need and trying to find, because assessors are getting far and few between.
Yeah, no, the reason I brought it up is because when I'm looking at all the responsibilities that fall under the finance department, because the assessors report to finance, although I do know that there was a separate fund where the employees were paid for assessing.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily a part of the same staff.
Can we hire another accountant?
You're saying fire who I have and hire a competent one, or?
I mean, since we making up roles, no, hire a second one to work under you. We have two accountants instead of doing a deputy finance director to save money.
And
I
one
don't
could
think it would
still
be
step
that
up.
much of a difference in pay, to be honest.
Yeah, the accountant we have now is only making $48,000, and you get what you pay for. So we're really looking to boost the pay scale to draw on somebody that can do the job.
Well, and the requirements for the job are different, and education-wise too are different.
Well, just, I mean, do levels of accountant. Accountant 1, accountant 2, this to be accountant 2. Accountant 1 have more of your roles and more of this role in a more pay grade. Can you do that?
We'd have to go to civil service and create that position, but it could be done.
I don't see why not.
When do we plan to vote on the budget? Do you know? It's got to be.
The last possible meeting, I think, right?
Linda, what's our date for that?
I think it's
If we're,
We have, then June will be the budget hearings, first meeting in June.
Yeah.
Second meeting will be approval of budget, adoption of budget.
so you've got 3 meetings before you have to do it.
I did do a little research, because when I seen the position, I was kind of like concerned about it also. So I compared to other cities that are comparable in size to Eastpointe. I don't have the exact cities that I looked up. Most, probably 80% of the I looked at, like 3 out of 4 that I looked at, did have a deputy finance director. There was only, I think, 1 that didn't.
If I can chime in, Roseville has an elected finance person, and then they have a full-time
I didn't
director.
compare to
Like,
Roseville. 'cause
They
it was
have an
bigger.
elected treasurer.
right.
Which doesn't do any accounting. All they do is bill taxes and collect. That is their sole function in life.
Yeah.
And you have a controller in Roseville that handles all of the accounting and everything else. So I am both treasurer, finance director, treasurer. So I do both roles.
Well, I was going to say, it might not be comparing apples to apples if Roseville's one of your,
It was not, because it's larger than Eastpointe. I tried to really
Okay.
keep to around like the 30,000 population, because I figured that would been, Roseville's gonna have more employees than Eastpointe
well, sure.
overall, because they're bigger. So I really tried to like find cities that, I believe one of them might have been Holland.
Okay. I think we know a guy from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
If you look in southeast Michigan, what you'll find is, when it comes to financial positions, Wayne County pays dirt. For whatever reason, they don't pay their people well. Oakland County pays them as the professionals they are, and Macomb County, I guess it's a bit of that blue-collar mentality that they pay okay, but not top dollar. And that's just the reality of how it lays out in the Tri-County area. And it, again, you get what you pay for. So,
Well, can you have it, name it a supervisor? When Steve Duchesne was here, he created a a position for Joe Marucci. So why can't you create a position for you to have a supervisor under you?
I have the ability through civil service. There is a deputy finance director position. There's a controller position. Well, the accountant's already filled, but those two positions actually exist within civil service. So I could hire someone in either classification.
It's funny because the whole reason I want to put the personnel thing in the budget is so that you couldn't do that.
And do what?
Like hire more
just create my
personnel.
own-
Yeah,
Well, yeah, it kind of creates problems.
yeah. So, I mean, I was sort of alluding to the issue that you just raised.
Yeah, I mean, there's positions within civil service that already exist. They're just not budgeted and filled. So I do have an option to not do a deputy and do a controller. It'd be a little lower pay scale, a little less responsibility, the way the job's written up. We've tried that.
Did it work?
We had an okay individual.
Well, we just need someone for right now, correct? You're not leaving us till about 10, 20 more years, right?
Yeah.
By that time, they should know your job.
I could walk out in the parking lot and be gone tonight, so.
I have a question. So the deputy finance director would not be union, though. He would be through the civil
Correct.
service board, so.
Be a non-union position.
Right, but if we were to hire a controller, would they be union?
No,
Okay.
no. None of the civil service
So they
roles
would-
are union.
I like the controller.
Yeah, there are a couple of things related to this because I do think your department's got a lot going on right now, but two things that I'm looking at is I know that when we had to reduce staff, it's when we decided we had to close City Hall on Fridays, and if we're starting to get back to normal staffing levels, that's an issue I'd want to revisit. If we're doing that, because I mean, part of the whole reason is supposed to release some of the workload. The second thing is, and I actually spoke to Mickey today, so.
Our elected Roseville treasurer.
Because I actually do think that we should budget more money and focus more on our technology, because when I spoke to you, and I know we still get like paper bills and stuff like that, I think if we invested in technology so that you're not bogged down paper pushing in that department if there was something more efficient and streamlined to use. So I don't know if that's something you've given thought to, but.
Let's send someone door to door signing up people. Yeah, because I get mine comes right out of my checking account and I get an email bill. There's no paper. I know we spend $7,000 a month on sending bills out. That cut that recurring cost. I guess is that what you're saying, Mr. Kleinfeld?
No, I was
Some
more.
people are always gonna want a paper bill, though. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's,
But eventually,
I mean, we got people still paying us in cash, so.
And quarters?
No, I was.
Almost.
No, I was thinking more of, because I don't think you can force residents to go electronic that don't want to.
I wasn't suggesting that.
But
I wish we could.
no, like, with contractors and stuff like that, I know that we still, like, the business that we do kind of like streamline. I don't know if you think that would be helpful, looking at the IT side of things and trying to go more paperless, but.
What would be
you have
helpful is
any-
the state would quit making new requirements, but
well, that would be a great suggestion for you to make to our new IT person, or to IT, about discussing.
And
Yeah,
just so you know, the closure on Friday is a negotiated item, because of the clerical union works Monday through Thursday. So that would have to be looked at as part of the clerical unit, negotiations.
So we have to
Gotcha.
open their contracts.
Yeah, the reason we're closed on Fridays, there's 10 of us in the building, not 45 of us.
Yeah, so that gives us a year and a half, 2 years before even
Correct.
visiting. Okay.
Just wanted to make sure you knew why.
That was not something I had thought about, that.
'Cause we had-
made into.
We'd basically cut back the hours versus taking it off their rate of pay. So they cut back their hours and left the rate. So that eliminated clerical on Fridays, and of course, it'd be a little hard to run this building with 10 people.
we also were able to eliminate part-time positions by closing on Friday, because they were working an hour before we opened to the public and a half hour after. So the clerks are getting work done without being bothered. And we were able to eliminate the part-time positions. If we open back up on Fridays, we'd have to hire more part-timers, because there's work that just can't be done when we're open to the public, whether it's a clerk or administration.
Do we need that many cashiers? Because I come in and out often throughout the week, and it's not that busy.
You ever been here on bill, or a water bill
No,
paying
water
day?
bill paying day, but that's,
Yeah, and
Not
in
throughout the whole
between
year,
due
though.
dates, there's mail coming in all the time. This is probably, this time of year is probably the slowest time of the year, because taxes are done, we haven't started up the new tax year, and all we have is water bill activity. But anytime from July 1st till the end of February, it's just a constant. And it's either people at the cashier window or somebody sitting at their desk processing mail.
so let's go back to the controller. Because that's something that you can let us know how much they are paid to work under you.
You got this job thing with you, Randy?
No, I'd have to,
I believe it'd be around 75,000
Probably
instead of
between-
85, but,
Are you asking about the grade scale?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't
didn't
have
bring
one
that
me
with me.
either. Yeah.
Did you say we in a negative, pretty much? You said that?
Yeah, 750 or whatever it is.
Well, because I'm trying to think about giving everybody what they need to run the city better. Like, if we can give him a controller at a decent rate, and then going back to the police department, he said we need a sergeant, but we can get a police officer, regular police officer, to save money.
Oh.
That can go towards, the deficit that we have, but still getting people what they need.
Right.
It's just something.
And part of that 700 that you keep talking about is capital money, so depending on what you do with the capital program, that might help on that side too.
Yeah, I had one idea for later.
Already got some more ideas for later, as usual.
Did anyone else have other questions related to finance?
Nope.
Anything on assessing?
I was gonna ask on assessing when our contract's up. It's probably next year then, isn't it, for the?
It was a 5-year contract. I'd have to see when it actually started. I don't recall that.
Do you think, it'll be down the line, but do you think there's any benefit to bringing that back into the fold eventually, or is it
No.
just?
They're trying to find qualified people it's been impossible. And that was one of the reasons we had, even before our assessor left, we had been looking at contracting it out, just because nobody's going into those types of jobs anymore, so.
It's getting harder to find a level 3 assessor.
Yeah.
If you need a level 4 assessor, you're really in trouble in this state. There's probably 3 in the whole state.
And their contract is good. It's a fixed price, and it only goes up by whatever the inflation factor on taxes is. So the first year it was 0.6, second year it was 0.9, this year it'll be a 2.1% increase, but their contract is linked to the CPI we use for taxes.
I like the idea of doing that for a lot of contracts, because they grow quicker than our revenue, but. Any other questions on assessing?
Nope.
Is there anything else we need to do with them, or everything's happy?
This is the smoothest assessing has run since I worked here.
Okay.
So,
All right, moving on to attorney, Randy Altemus.
Outside of Rich's normal pay, we built in some more DOJ money in there, so that's the biggest, that's the only big increase. Everything else is static. I think your contract is still in place, right where it needs to be, so. Basically, that's all I added to it, was added additional money for the Department of Justice.
Yeah, that, as you can see on page 88, members of council, that was a substantial increase. I attribute most of that to the Department of Justice litigation. There was also an increase in the amount of dangerous building hearings that the building department requested. You can see that also indicated. I've included that in the column where it's public hearings attended. There was previously 44, there was 55. That included all of the show cause hearings that were conducted over the course of the year. But there was also an increase in the amount of dangerous building hearings that started out and are initiated during the week here with the building department. As far as ordinances and amendments prepared, there was an additional 2 over the year before. I'm happy to report that of the lawsuits that were brought against the city that were not related to cases where MMRMA handles or appoints the representation, none of those lawsuits resulted in any money judgments against the city. In fact, they didn't result in any judgments, period, against the city. And as you can see, 8 of those were closed. A lot of those were cases where there was a property owner that was aggrieved by a decision of the city, and in order to prevent the demolition of a structure, they filed an injunction proceeding in the circuit court. The parties were able to resolve it, and so the lawsuit was dismissed. We do have one case that is on appeal right now with the Court of Appeals. That's arising out of a contract dispute involving retiree health care benefits. I would imagine that case will be orally argued sometime this year. We haven't received notice from the Court of Appeals. All of the briefs have been filed. We're just waiting on an oral argument date. But again, as far as the hours spent on city business, there was a substantial increase, and that was attributable mainly to the Department of Justice case.
If we tried sending a bill to the DOJ, maybe they'll just pay it.
Try. Be happy to do so.
And I was wondering, just, I mean, looking at all your monthly reports, it seems like you spend an incredible amount of time with the show cause hearings, or at least, you know, an incredible amount of real estate on your updates.
Yes.
Is there any way we can streamline those, or like?
I'm open to any suggestions, because that does take a lot of my time. It's usually done not during the day. It's usually done in the evenings or on the weekends. So if there was a way to stream that, I am, for instance, if there really hasn't been any development on the case, I can just not report on it for that particular month. But again, I am open to any suggestions, because that would probably reduce the report from, 18, 19 pages to about half of that.
I don't know if
I don't necessarily have an issue with that if there's no changes. If we have it the month previous or whatever, like that's, I don't need to be updated every month if there's nothing that changed on it.
Right. I guess the one thing when I've gone month to month, this is just a very organizational thing, but if each item had the same number month to month, or like if each, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If one gets cut out, now it's all of a sudden a different number each month. I have a hard time following month to month. I don't want to add anything to you, but also, I don't need to see a whole paragraph if there was no update in that month. I'm sure there's more. I was thinking of more significant, significant ideas than that, but just because it seems like probably a lot of the budget is spent on. I mean, they're very important, but it seems like there's got to be some way we can make it quicker or something. I don't have an idea. I was hoping you I mean, you didn't have to right now, but I guess it just
I'm open to
think
any
about it.
suggestions, and I will certainly think about possibly streamlining that. Yes.
Well, I'm happy with the budget as is on your department, because
Hopefully it's enough.
yeah, hopefully we don't get anywhere near that, but I definitely know, I think we all know that you're working a lot right now for Eastpointe, so.
What was the 17-18 amended? I know we have 350, and it must be a lot higher, right?
The amended was 650.
What is it?
650,000?
Oh, okay, so then we're just carrying over that for the next year also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I figured that was as good a number as any. Unless your crystal ball's working better than mine is, so.
Gosh, I wonder what this cost is for the DOJ also. It's gotta be way higher than that.
We spent about 750,000 so far, correct?
No, but I mean, on their side, what are they paying all their, I mean, they have 4 attorneys here just deposing people, you know?
Yeah, travel back and forth, all that stuff.
Yeah.
that
They have
got.
more experts, and they started reviewing the case well in advance of filing the action, so. But, yeah, the problem is that the residents, they're paying not only for the tax dollars to defend the case, but in reality, they're also paying because
Their federal tax dollars.
their federal tax dollars go to pay for that as well.
Wow.
But the reverse is not the same.
No.
So any more questions related to the attorney budget?
Nope.
Thank you.
Let's move on to clerks. Randy Altemus.
The only two major changes, of course, my budget goes up and down depending on how many elections we have. You know, I can have 1, I can have 2 or 3 if it's a presidential sequence. So this year we have 2 for the state elections budgeted, and also I incorporated the new pay that you guys were kind enough to give us for the election workers, so.
All right, are there any questions related to the clerk's department? All right, insurance, Mr. Blum?
Yes, that is a combination of retiree health care for general employees, non-police, non-fire, as well as the non-police and non-fire portion of workers' comp and general liability. It's gone up, what do we got, $24,000? And most of that is retiree health care. It's just the premiums increase every year. A little bit of an increase in workers' comp, about 8,000 there, and general liabilities down about 1,500. So there's not much to that. It's just a way to track the expenses.
Any questions for Mr. Blum?
Nope.
All right, moving on to City Hall, Mr. Altemus.
Basically, pretty much budgeted what I normally do. Didn't really add anything additional into this. I have all the maintenance, all the the software licenses. The city hall maintenance of the building is in there. The electrical, building maintenance, heating and cooling. Pretty well, the budget's staying pretty stable at this point, as far as the heating, cooling, electrical, and that kind of stuff, so. Unless you have some specific, obviously, the debt service is the payment for the city hall payment.
I just have a motor pool question. I was just wondering what the 120,000 for the motor pool, what was that for the pool vehicles for City Hall?
We had originally looked at replacing 5 of the vehicles out here, the code enforcement vehicles. We were gonna do that this year. The motor pool just didn't have the funding for it, so we shifted it a year. So that'd be 5 new code enforcement vehicles.
How old are those?
They're 2014s.
So we need new ones?
The idea is that with the government discount that we get when we buy them, that at the 3-year mark, the warranty expires, we can sell them without, we don't recoup 100% of our price, but we get a really good return at the 3-year mark, and then we just buy new ones. That was the original plan. You know, we're gonna be 5 years into it by the time we buy any new ones here. We have the option of keeping what we have and just driving them into the ground. But the idea originally was just to hold them during the maintenance period, or the warranty period only, and then just keep turning them over.
When is the warranty period? How long is that?
3 years, 36,000 miles. So.
Do we hit 36 before?
No, no. I think the last time I checked, the highest mileage vehicle was about 15,000 miles. They don't put that many miles on those cars.
How many cars do we have for code enforcement?
Well, we actually have 10. We got the 8 Fiestas, we have 1 Charger, a leftover police vehicle, and then the big Transit. And all,
So we have
all 10
8
of those.
Charger, the 8 of the small.
8 of the small
oh, yeah,
ones.
okay, so 8.
Yeah.
And how many people do we usually have out at a time on the road?
8 or 10, I mean. They're all out. I mean, you come here middle of the morning, middle of the afternoon. I mean, they basically start here in the morning, get their paperwork, go out and do their code enforcement, come back for lunch, go out and do more code enforcement, and then do their paperwork at the end of the day.
That's code enforcement and rental,
Rental, yeah.
because we have 4 rental inspectors are out,
Yeah.
Okay.
along with our assistant, building inspector.
I'm thinking that the professional and contract services, which is IT, is probably gonna end up costing more
Yeah,
than 118.
it probably will, but I think we could wait and see what happens.
Okay.
Well, I was going to suggest our new vendor look at all of the things that we pay for right now, because I've always thought a couple things were unnecessary. Can we have them look at that first?
Yeah,
Make a-
the people that are coming in is more of, just getting things stabilized and get me to a point where I can get an RFP put together. And then we'll put an RFP out and get that, and then get somebody permanent, so, we can get it back to you folks for approval, so.
Okay, so then they wouldn't make any sort of analysis like that, that'd
Well,
be for
as
the permanent.
part of the RFP, we'll take a look at the whole situation, because IT means more than just computers, it means telephones, it's everything, as you're aware of. So we'll take a look at all this. A lot of the BSNA stuff, that's BSNA, that's not, that's our financial software. Municode is our, our ordinances and stuff, that's different. Ameriscan is our online, agenda that we do, that kind of stuff. So really, the stuff that pertains to IT is the backup software, the firewalls, that stuff that we have. We've whittled that down from, I think, 3 or 4 down to a couple now, so. But we'll look at the whole package, because I want to make sure that, however because I haven't had an RFP out in a while, so it needs to be completely revamped, and the people coming in that are gonna help me indicated that would be not a problem. So we'll take a look at the whole situation.
If it's possible, I think it'd be a good idea to include the courts on, because, I don't know if we could combine the web hosting to save on that, and then also who works on our website maybe could help develop the court website some ways.
Yeah, I don't know who does the court website, to be honest. That's always been separate.
I think I've seen it in the payroll and bills, and I think it's just a single individual that does it just on the side from the name in the check register.
But we did when Judge Gerds came in, he approached us, and we actually combined forces on the IT services, so that was separate too at one point. So we have combined that.
So my suggestion for this area was not replacing all the computers this year, pushing that back a year or two. I don't think every 3 years, that'd be 150 of the 750. I'm guessing probably no major issues with anyone on their computers.
Well, we do it every 3 years because that's the warranty on them. So if I have one fail under warranty, I don't have to pay for it. You just return it and get a new one. We've always had that. We have gone 4 years, and we have had substantial, what I consider, if you have more than 10, I get nervous. The monitors, we have not replaced a lot of those monitors since like 2008, and they're really.
Saw that, that's probably cool.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, we can try it again. I don't know while we go through the IT process when we're gonna, obviously, I'm not gonna attack replacing 100 computers without an IT consultant in place. So that might get pushed back anyways, just because of the nature of the beast. So if you want to make that, we can try it and see how it goes again.
Or because if we're having that many issues also, maybe we should pay a little more for the computers than we do, and then because I've been a software developer, I've never gotten a new computer at my, I don't get a new computer every 3 years, and I'm a software developer, so I don't think we at City Hall here, need every 3 years. I know that's what we've been doing.
You'd be surprised how many I have break, so I
Right,
just want to make sure I don't have anybody, down.
How many computers are there right now?
We have, because we include the court, we're over 100 to about 110 computers total.
Do we have?
And, go ahead. At the court, I'd never heard of, at the Court of Appeals at where I work, we have these little things called zero clients, which are just little tiny things that connect to like a virtual desktop. Maybe whoever our next IT person is can look at those, because these little boxes are a couple hundred a piece, and you can manage it a lot easier. I'd never even heard of it until I moved there, but maybe we can look at that, because then you can just upgrade a server, and then the boxes last for who knows how long, because it's just connecting back and forth. And if it's in City Hall here, it'll be a good connection, something like that. That's what I hope like the IT folks we're bringing in can do, or the permanent folks, instead of buying 150 grand in new computers every 3 years. Yeah.
Maybe we should just hire you, since we
I'll
doing
come in on
dual-
Saturdays.
We're doing dual roles now, city council / IT /
No, thank you.
Yeah, I just think with trying to bring on a new group, we're gonna have to push that off anyways. I mean, we're gonna have a learning curve big enough, so that's fine.
So 750 is now 600.
But I'd at least still like to have the monitors if that's okay, because I've got.
No,
some old
that
ones.
2008's old.
Yeah.
That's, I'm not gonna give
I
you a
got
hard
people
time about that.
squinting now because of some of them have two monitors going, so they
Yep.
go back and forth, and you put a new one on there and you put the other one next to it, it's like, holy smokes.
No, you
There's
gotta
a-
have matching ones too.
Yeah,
I,
it's pretty obvious, so.
I can agree with that.
But yeah, there's gonna be probably a difference in that line item, but let's just wait and see how it pans out on the RFP.
Okay.
So I think what we had budgeted is the 289 is for payment that used to go through the building authority, right?
Right.
How much do we owe left on City Hall?
Are you writing us a check, Mike?
That would be a Mr. Blum question. I just budget what he tells me.
Debt schedule. Yeah, I don't have a debt schedule with me. Oh, you know what? Isn't there one back here?
There should be a debt schedule. I thought you put one together. Yeah, in the back.
There's one somewhere in here.
Debt management, is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's just a write-up. I think it's in a statistical.
Find out who knows the budget best.
Well, he puts them together, so I would hope he'd win.
I hope so.
I create the schedule. I don't.
That's why we
go
need
into
a
this
second
book.
person.
People.
Got it.
Well,
Not there,
oh, well, it could be right here then. Yeah, under the debt.
548,000, right?
No, the 184 debt management, the On June 30th of 2018, it will be $3,340,000. So after the fiscal year 19, we'll be down to $3,140,000.
What page is that?
What page?
184.
Do you know how much we paid on it? Because I thought this was between 4 and 4.5 when we built it.
It started off as a $4.6 million bond issue, you know.
We've only paid off 1.3 in 10 years.
That is possible with the
Oh, yeah,
interest.
because most of it's going to be interest at the beginning, just like your mortgage.
Sure.
Okay.
We didn't make a down payment. I guess I'm not familiar with when we did this.
No, the whole project was bonded.
All right.
I was just curious on that because wasn't sure how long. I mean, it looks like we're going to be making payments for a while still on that.
Oh, yeah, it was refinanced for 17 years, so there's another 15 years to go. It's
I
we're
will
only
say
2
this is
years into the
only year 2.
refinance.
But when it was refinanced, it was for the same amount of time. I thought
We
that
shortened it by 1 year, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And saved 500,000.
Yeah, it was four something, 450-ish, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Did anyone else have anything else on City Hall?
Nope.
Special events, Mr. Blum?
That's just the projection for parades and such, where we bring out DPW workers and then we get reimbursed for it. It's been dropped dramatically because the number of events have been cut back.
Just pays for itself, right?
It does, yeah. We get reimbursed for all of that.
All right. Did anyone have questions on that?
I'm trying to find the page. Page is that on?
Yeah. What page are we at now?
What page is that on?
112.
Thank you.
See all over the place. Okay.
All right. Moving on to Military Museum, Mr. Altemus.
That's just kind of a miscellaneous number.
It's the security system, the phone charges for the security system over there. It's $1,000, but we have to budget for it, so.
Did anyone have questions related to that?
Nope.
Yeah, I did. Where's that money come, I mean, that is a city building, right?
Yes.
And we're not getting anything from it?
We're, no, not really. Because they take on all the maintenance and everything, the negotiation was $1 a year, and they handle all the maintenance side. The only thing we handle is some of the mowing in the back where the tennis courts are, because that's not really part of the museum. And then they handle the mowing maintenance and everything else, so.
Thought we did some.
Is
did
it
some
being used?
HVAC the other- Oh, sorry, Monique.
Sorry. Is it being used by the community? I mean,
Yeah, they have tours through there quite often. And we still use it as a precinct. It's one of my precincts too,
okay,
so.
that's true. I forgot about that, yeah.
But yeah, I think they have private tours all the time over there. They do all kinds of,
Well, they're open on Saturday and
Saturday, Sunday,
right?
every
Yeah.
weekend,
yeah.
yeah.
Then they put on special events and they have speakers and all kinds of stuff that they do.
And they also help out with the Memorial Day parade planning and.
I've been trying to get them to do a little more promotion through us so we can let everybody know of their programs and such, and sometimes they forget.
I was just thinking we could actually get money from that building. It's a city-owned building. We're only getting $1. What, is that $1 a year?
Yeah, we.
How did that get passed?
Because again, we negotiated them taking over the building. The building was actually empty. And we can't get rid of it because there's grant money that went involved in that. So for us to do anything with it, we would end up having to pay back, what was it, 15 or 20,000 on a grant that they put in for it many years ago. So it was sitting empty. We weren't going to move back into it, and it was kind of just something that came up at the time.
So they pay all the fees on that building. We don't pay anything.
I don't pay anything. They
Except
pay the
security.
electrical, Yeah, and I think they're moving to try to get rid of that, so we
Yeah.
can get rid of that payment too.
But yeah, if we hadn't have done this $1 a year lease and they pick up the utilities and maintenance, we would be paying, because you still gotta heat the place so it doesn't fall apart. So we'd be paying utilities in an empty building. We'd be doing the maintenance ourselves on the empty building.
Why wasn't that used as a recreation center or
It was
something?
a senior center, but at the time, when all this happened, it was when the finances of the city started to get really bad, and we moved the seniors back over to 8 Mile with the community center to eliminate 2 buildings running. So that it was kind of a downsizing at that point.
Now we
'Cause-
don't have that now, so, right?
Correct.
So can't we use the money that we are getting back and put it into that building and move the seniors back in there? Make
The
some money
senior
off of it?
program is with Rare.
I mean, this discussion, I think, is really a lease discussion. I don't know when that's coming up in front of us again. Do you know? Is
We
it
were gonna put something, we were waiting for the manager to sit down, a new manager come in, and we'll sit down and talk about the whole thing. You should go in it if you haven't been in it, it's pretty extraordinary.
I've been in it. I wouldn't say extraordinary, but it was nice. I just don't, I mean, I think the citizens should, the residents should know about it. Nobody, it's like you said, it's not, you know, nobody really knows about it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know. I just had to drive past it. It was like, what that building? What is that building? So if it's not being, I mean, you saying tours and things like that, I'm not seeing it being used by the residents in the city-owned city building. It should be a reflection of the residents, and I mean, that's what makes it extraordinary. I mean, the history is good, but like I said, no one was really there. It's not, nobody knows about it. If you ask most of the citizens who come in here and say, we have a historical, museum, they're gonna say where? Military museum, they're gonna say where? So,
Well, if we do change something with how we're leasing it or something like that, we can then go back and address budget-wise what we want to do, if that makes sense. I mean, right now, I'm not sure if there's anything we can do with that.
I'm just saying if we're in a deficit, how are we charging people $1 to rent out a city building and we need money?
Well, we're also not paying whatever we were paying for heating
So
and
you're
cooling.
suggesting that we sell the building?
That would mean you'd have to pay the grant back at about $15,000 to $20,000 back to the state of Michigan. We researched that out too. I really wanted to do that back then, when we weren't gonna use it, and that's when we found out that they had gotten a grant and used the whole facility as part of the grant.
Is there no end date on the grant?
No. The end date is because it was for the tennis courts, you either replace the tennis courts
With your own money.
with your own money, which is a lot more money, or you pay the grant back. Those are your 2 options.
Now, the grant was for the use of, what was the grant about?
The grant was for the building of the tennis courts. And unfortunately, because the property actually is in 2 parcels, but they used the whole land as part of the grant. So the grant includes the building and the tennis courts, and there's no way to subdivide that out. So you have 2 choices. You can build brand-new tennis courts over there, which is gonna be a lot more expensive, or you have to pay the grant back.
Can I just, because I agree with Mike, like, this is something we're gonna discuss when we renew their lease. But when it comes time to renew their lease, can we just get an idea have someone come out and give us the idea of the value of that property,
Sure.
if we were to sell it?
I think we can get appraisal of that.
That makes sense. I don't want to sell it because I think but I would
I
want
agree,
to
I
know
don't wanna sell
what's
it
the
either, but
rental
let's just
and
see where
the-
we're at.
Yeah, just to
with
know.
that.
And can you put just the info on that grant too in the memo then?
Yeah, we'll find it. Mr. Albright did most of the research on that, so.
That was about, what, 6 years ago,
Yeah.
7 years ago?
Is that on our website? The museum? Is that on our website? It'd be nice to have something, you know, on our website saying, welcome to Eastpointe. Here are some of the things that we're doing here. I mean,
We do have it on our wayfinding signs. Again, I've been trying to get them to give me the promotional stuff so we can promote them a little better too, and I think they just kind of forget that, so. But it might be on our website, and
I think I've seen things on the calendar when they've had like an exhibit or something like that.
Yeah.
I think they do.
well, that's why I
advertise.
keep reminding Chris, if you give us the information, we can get you on the calendar, we can put it on the cable, you know, we can even promote it on the digital sign, so.
Do we have any other questions related to the budget for the military museum?
No?
All right, moving on to general fund capital projects.
And that takes you back to the capital program, or improvement program, which would be 174, that's where that schedule is.
Thank you.
So should we, move back the replacement of computers at least a year or two then, if we're looking at this?
Yeah, you want me to put it back one year or two?
Maybe we should do one and then just see where we are next year.
Next
when
year,
we do
sure.
budget.
Yeah, that way we'd have a new firm on board to allow, you know, do
Yeah.
an analysis of it.
Cleans up our red ink a little bit.
Yeah. The only other thing on the building and ground improvement was the shade canopy that we need to do on the outside of this door. If you come through that door in the summer, you'll find out why, because it takes the bulk of the sun, and it actually changes the door mechanism so bad that it won't even close, but it gets so hot that you can't touch the door. So we're just talking about putting something over there just to give it some break, so I don't have to repair the door all summer. And the last thing I want is the door sticking open too. That's, on the police side, we have the 3 police vehicles that they budget for each year. And then we've got if you heard Karen about the issue of traffic patterns in their building, we have interior and exterior door replacements. Some of their exterior doors are those old metal doors, and they're rotting. So that'll, you know, bring that up to speed and replace that. Plus, we were looking at just changing that traffic flow like she was talking about.
Can I back up one real
Yep.
quick? The vehicles, does our budget factor in, because then we sell a couple at the same time we buy a couple. We did the Chargers on Craigslist that one time, right? I think we sold them for 8 or 10 grand a piece. Do we factor that into the budget? I don't remember.
It would show up as a sale of fixed assets as a revenue item, but that will get factored in when it happens.
Okay.
Comes into the general fund,
No, those are motor pool,
motor pool.
yeah. That's how we basically fund part of the new one, is selling the old ones.
We don't even just like conservative 5,000 a piece or something like that in the budget?
We haven't. We kind of wait and see what we get for them. The original estimate at the 3-year mark was about 9,500. I have not checked recently to see what a 4-year-old one is
Yeah.
going for.
Okay.
The other project in there is for the fire department. If you've been over and looked at their bay, just inside the doors there, the terrazzo floors are now cracking. And before that gets further into the bay, I want to make sure we get that repaired. I did talk to the fire marshal today about setting up a time for me to meet with the staff to go through the building, because, you know, when we're talking about the complex, I kind of took the buildings back out of it, and I want to make sure we get that building reevaluated. So, but that does need to be done before we lose the whole floor.
Sorry, I meant to ask about the other police one too. Was that 88,000 for 8, was it 8 doors that they were asking? Are they
No,
like
that's
10?
88,000 for all the doors in the police court building.
Oh, those aren't the
The
I
bullet,
think it's-
bulletproof
I think
doors?
it is the bullet.
Well, they're doing that separately, but this is all the doors on the complex itself. I'm not, if they have some bulletproof they want us to look at, we'll do that too, but, this is all the interior, exterior doors on the complex.
Shouldn't we have the other request in here too, or are we not doing that? Or right, wouldn't that be in the, capital?
Which request?
The, 8 bulletproof doors they were asking.
From the court, if there's a separate expenditure for the bulletproof glass from the court, wouldn't that be in the CIP?
Yes, we probably should put it up under the district court section. I didn't realize they had put that in there, so.
Unless the city manager proposal didn't include that, you know?
It was never discussed at any of the meetings, so
Okay.
it does not include that.
Oh, okay.
We'll take a look at it, put it as, if we need to, under this project.
Okay.
Not under there, no, that hasn't, never mind. That was something else.
Any questions on the terrazzo floor? I just don't wanna lose the rest of that floor.
No, I mean, we're probably gonna see it on June 1st, I think, right?
Yeah, on the door, yeah. It's basically, every bay, there's a crack that's now setting in on that terrazzo floor, so, one of them actually goes back, whoop. Oh, yeah, on Wednesdays, we,
No, we're
All right.
staying until we're done.
I'll, flick that back on, no, it's on the timer in the finance department.
We could save on lighting while we're here.
Yeah.
Right. Mark it down low.
The only other one would be the discussion in the parks and trails section. This year, Mr. Blum and I talked about starting to put some money aside every year to do this miscellaneous repairs that everybody's been talking about, and starting to get that going. Whether it's all, we pick, one park a year or one thing, like all fences or all concrete. So that should kind of kickstart that, and then whatever you want to do with the money, that you're getting out of the sale of the recreation facility, that could help kickstart that.
Did we skip DPW? Sorry, or we,
haven't gotten
or,
to DPW.
wait, no, not DP,
DPW. 's
Motor
not
pool
general
fund, sorry. No, motor pool fund, sorry.
Well, if you want to we'll just take the whole capital instead of just the general fund portion.
Oh, okay, I see.
No, you're fine. We have a replacement for one of the DPW pickup trucks, and then the discussion that we've had on the pool vehicles. Again, we just shifted that back 1 year to take a look at it.
Or we're talking about the Fiestas.
Yeah, and that money would come out of the motor pool fund,
Yeah.
so.
I didn't even know they still made Fiestas, that's weird.
Oh yeah, isn't Ford going down to
Ford's,
2 cars now?
is it 2020? They're going
2022.
down to
eliminating
Mustang,
all passenger
Focus or
vehicles.
something?
yeah, the
Mustang and
Focus,
Focus.
and then all SUVs or trucks.
They might as well bring the neons back.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a good business.
We better sell those
strategy or
Fiestas quick. Or actually, maybe they're vintage
No, they'll-
collector
yeah,
items.
they'll be collectors.
There we are.
Be a collector's item.
We have some classics at DPW.
Was they gonna be on a Gratiot cruise then, the Fiestas, like?
Well, what is technically a 1993 or something is classic now. My first car would be a classic.
My first car is a classic, so. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, that would be in the motor pool fund itself, those vehicles. Under the Parks and Trail, again, the 30,000, we thought this would be a good jump start to start getting those items that everybody's been talking about, starting to fixed. And then the other discussion we have to have is, do you still want to do, we talked with the school district about renovating the Memorial Field building out there when we had the joint meeting. Are you still interested in wanting to do that project?
Well, Cardi, I think you asked for the amount we had spent on that building before, hadn't you?
Sure, at some point.
No, I thought we got
There's
information.
FOIAs that we've received on how much we
From Mr.
spent,
Creech.
and, yeah, and I know that there's.
We've
one.
already spent, I think, 150 grand, I thought it was at least. But, or that could be, well, that's the amount we posted on Facebook then, when I sent you the Facebook,
Yeah.
post that the city had made. They took pictures of people demolishing it and said that maybe they said we budgeted 150,000.
Originally, when we were originally talking about doing the Patriot Building a couple years ago and Memorial Field, we had 150 for one, and I think it was 175 for the other or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, my issue with the numbers here, 400,000 for that tiny building, it would be cheaper to tear it down and rebuild something there, I think.
We looked at going to prefab, and they're actually a lot more expensive than you think, and trying to match the size of the building. If you look at it, the building's actually bigger than you think it is, because it's kind of a T-shaped building, with the restroom facilities and then storage on the south end, and then the concession stand is in there, plus the locker rooms are all in there. So when we were looking at it, we were looking at, gutting it, replacing the roof, doing that. The first phase was gonna do the outside of the building and the concession stand area. The concession stand doesn't really meet the Department of Health standards. So that would be gutting it all and then bringing in the stuff that does meet that.
Did partners look at a whole new building? Or did
Knocking
they
it down,
just-
going to prefab. We did look at a prefab building. It was upwards of 420, I think it was, a couple years ago.
I hate to ask this, but what do you mean by prefab? What is?
Well, a prefab where you have, you take down your current building. You have the cement floor
Sure.
left, and then you bring in a building that's already built or, put together, and then you put it on, and it usually comes in a couple pieces, and you connect it and then rebuild it. If you build it from ground up, like a regular construction building, it's gonna be a lot more than that, if you're trying to match the same square footage.
Cardi, to answer your question, I just looked, it was around 35,000, I believe we've put in there so far, and mainly that was all heating and cooling expense. Ductwork,
I think it had to be more than that, I thought.
Well,
I
don't,
think I might have it.
Well,
don't mix up Patriot Building with
Patriot
more.
Building was a lot more, we had a lot of invoices for the Patriot
Because
Building.
when we
but
went over and
that
toured
was
it,
just
It
for
was
the,
around 50 grand, I wanna say.
I think that was more than that.
Could have been more when it was all done.
We did all the windows.
when we went over and toured it, all I saw was new ductwork, a new furnace, and a new hot water heater. That's all I saw.
Yeah, that's,
Well, I mean, I think this is another item that's gonna be good for us to tour because,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not sure exactly what scope we're looking at, but 400 grand seems like a lot for the size of that building, because it's lockers and a concession stand.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess the
That's- I
question
mean,
is,
that's-
are the locker rooms used by the school? They are used.
Yeah, and it's
Or is the whole
redoing.
building used, the space?
It is. The one space that we can repurpose is the south end of the building, which we can use as storage, which is basically just gutting it. So you're not putting really any new things, but it needs new plumbing, it needs new fixtures, toilet fixtures, sink fixtures, even the dividers need to be replaced. Some are rusted, some have been broken so many times.
I do think the showers that are in there, I don't think you need to build showers. I don't
No,
think
no,
those are
we
ever-
actually took those out, and that's part of it, is just reusing it. But the bathrooms are pretty good sized bathrooms in there, so square footage wise, when you look at it. They have anywhere from 4 to 5 stalls in them. which is pretty good size, which is good, especially if you got a large number of football people.
Now help me understand, so the schools use that space. Do they help with the finances with that?
Well, if you heard them when we met, they indicated that they can't use school funding to pay for something that they don't own. That was the statement.
Doesn't mean they
that
couldn't
was
rent it.
I thought they did rent it.
They don't pay
when
us a
they
dime.
Get it from, oh,
They pay Rare something for the football field,
well, that's what I thought. I thought they.
but that
paid
does
for it.
not include the concession stand. It's just to pay for some maintenance on the football field.
So you said they can rent it? That's what
They
you said?
could. They pretend they can't, but they could.
So rare
They
means-
can't spend their money renovating our building, but they could rent our building from us.
And we can get fees and use that to fix it up, correct? So let's do that. Can we?
You convince the schools to pay us some money.
All right, I'll put that down.
They should have,
Hold on, I need to talk to the superintendent. Who?
we didn't do a bond yesterday, right? Roseville did, we should have done one too.
Not based on my 334 people that showed up. I'm 100% sure there was no bond on our ballot. This was what came out of our combined meeting. It's
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, with the project.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you, Mike. What a brand new, I mean, how many square feet is that? Because like a brand new house, isn't gonna be 400 grand. And
It's over 2,000 square feet. I don't remember exactly, but again, when you look at it from the street, it does look small, but remember, it's teed.
Right,
So
yeah.
when you get back there, it actually does. When you look at it on your tour, it does look bigger than you would think.
Yeah.
Especially when you get into the areas. And the concession stand's pretty good size too. And I think that's all on the CIP side that has anything to do with general fund. Or
Yes.
basically anything that's outside of roads and water mains.
Yeah.
All right. Did anyone have any additional questions?
No.
Good, then Mr. Blum can talk the rest of the night.
You can take a nap.
I'm gonna need one here pretty soon.
But economic development is
yeah,
next. That's
economic
still you?
Oh, crap.
Oh, you didn't get out of it.
Which, did we have line items for that? I couldn't, I don't know if these are out of order, but I didn't even see there is a department?
Yes.
Right here, line item, yeah.
Well, it goes from 215 to
Page
295.
26 on the line items.
Must be hidden.
Let's see that department.
Page 26.
244.
Economic development.
Yeah.
What the heck kind of order, wait, 728, did you give us the wrong number? What's
I have
244?
244.
Oh, wait.
Page 26.
The ones on the email that have numbers in brackets, those are fund numbers that are not part of general fund. So economic development is actually Fund 244. It is not part of general fund. So if you go to the fund and department section, it's actually a separate item. You got major and local streets, street lighting, economic development, DDA.
Why?
Because that's the fund order.
Welcome to municipal government budgeting. Economic development is basically, that's Bill in our office, when he's doing all kinds of, website and that development. Community promotion is, any kind of miscellaneous promotional things that we would like to do, for the city. I just kind of keep it there just in case.
Is there something bigger picture we can do than offsetting another department? Where does this, money come from then, we're saying?
This money, I think it's,
It's just from general fund though, but.
No, Cal, I don't know how many years ago now it's been. Over a decade ago. It might be 15 years ago. The city transferred $600,000 into this fund and has been slowly spending it down. At the end of fiscal year 18, if we were on budget, we will be down to about $90,000 left in the fund. So at some point, we either are gonna have to replenish it, or just stop doing it,
Well,
or just move it into general fund.
and back when I got here, they had an economic development / DDA director too.
Steve Horstman?
Yeah, so he was budgeted into this area. That's probably why the transfer did, and it was probably something for one of his programs that he was running.
Does the DDA pay for half of Bill's salary then?
No, it just is basically out of economic development. I'm trying not to put any more into DDA than I have to, because it's getting tight.
Because we cut it in half, is that what you're saying? Yeah, isn't it, it's going from 57 to 30? Is that what you're saying?
I was asking because it says that there's a position paid through the Economic Development Fund that's divided between this and DDA.
That's an old write-up. We
Yeah.
haven't done that in years.
I forgot to change
Let's
it.
update these.
It's also dropping because we eliminated the part-time position for the grant writer.
Is that Miss Candell?
Yes.
What is the purpose of putting this money into EDC instead of just having direct employees?
What do you mean by direct employees?
You mean just putting Bill in the general fund?
Yeah, creating that position and putting them somewhere, like in the city manager's office or under Mary for economic development.
Yeah, who does he report?
What, I just don't
City
understand,
manager.
creating an entity, transferring money in, and then,
There was a purpose when they moved the 600,000 in. I wasn't a part of it, and I couldn't tell you what it was. And we've basically just been waiting for it to run out of money so that we could then, I mean, we could transfer it right back to general fund where it came from, whatever balance is left, and move that expense into general fund.
Basically, we put them in there is just because of when we were so tight. It would just gave us a funding source to have somebody that could do website, could do promotional stuff.
are there bylaws to this, like nonprofit?
Not that I'm aware of. Like I said, I think there was an intent to use it for something different that it never became.
I think they actually were talking back then about using some of it as seed money. Is that the right term?
There was something about seed money, but I don't know what they were seeding. Again, I wasn't a party to it.
I guess who controls it? I mean, it's in here, but if we're not putting money into it, it's not,
See if I can.
I mean, I guess we manage the funds for it, so this just seems odd to me. So we're holding the funds for a nonprofit?
Well, the Economic Development Fund was with an Economic Development Director, but,
I mean, it's part of the city. It's not a nonprofit.
You're just
Well, I
reading,
mean, this-
he's reading off the page.
Yeah, it says that it's a nonprofit organization.
I guess the city's a
would assume-
nonprofit organization too, right?
I would assume that it was like created as a separate entity.
Yeah, I think we've lost the purpose, I think is what
Oh,
you're getting
absolutely.
at.
It makes
There's
no
nobody
sense.
here that knows what the purpose of this fund started as.
If we control it, it seems like we should just.
put it back.
We can
into the
dissolve
fund.
it.
We
That
can
is
do
not a
that.
That's what
problem.
I was gonna say.
June 30th, we dissolve it, transfer any balance back to general fund, and move this budget into,
Well, we do a little more
Mary's-
research
I
first.
think we
and,
need this. I think every city has economic development fund, don't they, to help other
It-
businesses and things like that?
It's not the economic development portion of it, it's that I don't understand the separate,
Why we have like a separate budget for
Yeah,
it. Like,
and
why is
it-
it not just put in with the city manager budget?
Right.
I think that's what we're trying to decide.
And we can do that. We can
And-
transfer everything out of here, get rid of this Economic Development Fund budget, have everything that we're using it for in the
Yeah,
manager.
still have the, allocated funds for economic development out of the city manager's budget.
yeah. When we had a grant writer brought on, this just makes it so we don't really see it, I think. But, I don't know, I guess. I'd have
If
to
you
learn
feel
more about it.
comfortable with moving it back in, we can do that. That's not, and to answer your question. The economic development side is under Mary Van Haren, under redevelopment. So,
Right.
you know, that is being taken care of through that. We just don't have a separate person. When I got here, we had one person, and all he did was DDA and economic development. They had a separate person.
The oldest document I found in our minutes here is the appropriation for the general fund revenues and such, July 1st, 2006 to June 30, 2007. I see 314, wait, where did it go? Yeah, $314,847
Now,
allocated to the Economic Development Fund.
yeah, I mean, maybe now it just is a fund, and this information about it being like a nonprofit organization is
Well,
just old.
if we take it and put everything back into the general fund, then we can just get rid of the write-up completely.
I think
I
we
think
should
could
do
get rid of
something
the,
bigger picture.
Building authority too could probably be dissolved.
Well, it's inactive.
Yeah, I mean,
Until we decide
building
to do a new
authority is in
project.
place. If you do another project on another building, you wouldn't have to create it.
So what was done prior to, Bill being under this, that the economic development fund, because I know some economic development funds help fund other, businesses with, you know, better developing of their, you know, like the DDA and things like that. So they do put money in a certain fund to, grow the city.
And I think that was the original purpose when they had the economic development director.
Okay.
I think that's what the purpose was, but when we went through the downsizing, that was one of the positions. And even DDA had lost so much money, we couldn't even afford to have half of his salary and benefits. So the downsizing was part of losing that position.
Why can't you combine the economic development fund with the DDA?
Well, DDA is a separate entity. I don't want to call it an entity. How would you
Well, it
say
is. I mean,
Yeah,
it has its own
basically
board,
is.
it has its own tax.
It has its own board, its
capture
own tax,
taxes.
everything else, so you don't want to commingle that.
It's like an authority like Rare.
Yeah.
But they do get their own,
Money.
but yeah.
I think this goes back to June 22nd, 1977. An ordinance,
This particular fund does not go back that far.
I see an ordinance approving the incorporation of the Economic Development Corporation of the City of East Detroit. Whereas, you know, as long as it's passed, well, it's signed by the city clerk and adopted July 25th, 1977. So maybe that one.
That's when it was halfway Michigan.
That could have been an offshoot of this in some way, I think.
Maybe they're trying to revive whatever that is.
Okay. That's our history lesson for today.
Thank you, appreciate
So
it.
we'll
Suzanne probably
just
could have just
dissolve
told us
that out and combine it? Is
Well,
that-
I guess however you guys want to do it, I think just looking at the budget, it was confusing. Where's the money come from? You know, how is this,
Yeah.
there's personnel in there?
I think at this point, it doesn't,
There's no new money coming into it,
Right.
or we're just slowly using up the
It's
money.
gonna end up being transferred sooner or later into general fund.
Yeah.
You might as well do it sooner than later.
But I'm glad we know it's dwindling now, so we're not surprised when we have to pick up another
Yeah.
personnel.
I mean,
start paying.
realistically, it's gonna run out of money during fiscal year 20 if you don't make any changes. So, yeah, it's gonna happen naturally if you
And at that
don't do it
point-
intentionally.
You know, the new manager will decide how he wants to organize the office.
Let's make it parks money. That's my vote.
All right, were there any other
Yeah.
questions on that right now?
No.
Then we'll move on to, well, there's a whole bunch of funds, Mr. Blum, if you want to talk about major streets and,
All right, and we'll start with major streets. One thing you'll see with this budget is there is an increase in the state gas tax funds that are coming in. We're starting to see the improvement from the recent changes in registration fees and taxes. We're currently projecting $1,950,000 for major streets coming in. We do still plan on transferring half of that over to local streets where we truly have a need. The expenses in here is our best guess of allocating 10 miles time. The way it's actually allocated is, see if I can get this straight. We have 50% of the time goes to water, 20% is going to sewer. We have, I think, another 20% going to local, and the balance goes to major. We don't do a lot with our personnel on the major side unless it's snow plowing Gratiot or the major streets. There really just isn't that much activity going on. We do have budget for the capital projects, which are in the CIP section of the budget. Trying to think what else is relevant to this area. Yes, we've got 602,000 of major street improvements, the majority being Topher, and then the 975 transfer out to local. So even by transferring half of it over to local, we are going to use up some fund balance, but this is one of the few funds that is, I would call it, healthy enough to handle it. On the local side, there's also an increase in the state gas tax, as well as an increase in the transfer in from major. So that's going from $1,465,000 up to $1,740,000 on the revenue side for local. Same thing, allocating the 10-mile labor activities into this area. And then right now, we only have $171,000 in capital, which is the city's portion of the CDBG project. This will help build the fund up if everything goes as budgeted. Let's see, we're going to be at 6, and then we're going to increase we'll actually be over $1 million in local streets at the end of fiscal year 19 as far as fund balance goes, which will then allow us some flexibility on doing some local street projects instead of just waiting on CDBG to make those happen.
Why did our, oh wait, no, that's a different line item. Oh, no, I guess the what were you saying about, so maintenance actual in 2016-17 for local was like 473K. And then now we're at 877. Why did our maintenance double this year?
From 16 to 17.
Where are we at?
Page 114.
Maintenance.
And then it's even going up another 70 for the next year. I'm just on the page 114 in the budget document, not the line item.
That is just the cost of personnel, and where we're projecting that they'll be working. You've
How
got
does that-
$831,000 minus that. You're looking at about $600,000 just in labor and benefits being charged to local streets.
Yeah, how does that change so drastically?
It just, again, it depends on where they work. When we budget, I don't know how many snowfalls we're gonna have, how many water main breaks we're gonna have, how many sewer collapses we're gonna have. We allocate the total cost of 10 mile with this percentage based on history. So what would have happened is 16-17, there wasn't a lot of activity in local streets. And probably more over on the water sewer side.
Well, forget this year, even forget the budget 18-19. Like labor and trade union for local streets. That first one, we're going from 50,000 in the 16-17 activity to 200,000 in 17-18 amended. So I'm guessing that amended's pretty close to accurate. So we've 4 times as much.
In 1 year.
I don't get how the maintenance would vary that much.
It just depends on what jobs are being assigned. Like I said, we make sure the budget in total matches what 10 mile cost. and we allocate it out on a percentage based on, you know, just historical run rates. What actually happens, I couldn't tell you going back to look at that. Well, actually, one thing you gotta look at is, you're probably looking at the routine maintenance only.
Yeah, for right now.
Okay.
Street repair.
We
and maintenance, that's the same
budget-
thing.
We budget everything in routine maintenance, because you're actually approving a budget for the fund in total. So that does skew it a bit. You've got 50,000 in actual routine maintenance, but you got 15,000 in traffic services, and you got 3,400 in winter maintenance, and, you know, you kind of have to break it down and look at the total cost.
Well, so the
It's
total
still,
levels.
it's still a significant increase, but you have to look at the total and not just these departmental breakdowns, because the only place the departmental breakdowns come into effect is the actual activity.
And that includes, in that line item, that includes our winter maintenance and plowing
Right.
charge there.
Okay, I mean,
That's one of the reasons I'm not a fan of line item detail, especially for major and local.
Well, but
Is it does skew things when you look at it that way.
But it's the capital, I mean, I get what you're saying, except for the last part, we're talking about local street improvements. We did $560,000 in projects in 16-17, and we only did 150 in 17-18, but yet we spent the same amount of money. No, I'm saying, just look at the last
Well,
Department 901, so capital's a lot
Right.
different than maintenance of the whole.
yeah, capital
Fund.
is when we contract out for a project, whatever that project happens to be, versus the maintenance would be our people doing stuff, whether it's cold patching or
No, I get
street
that,
sweeping or
so,
whatever.
I mean, that 400,000 difference could have been half a mile of a side street or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we,
What page are you looking at?
I'm on, 24.
Of the line item.
Of the line item.
Yeah, in the line item. Just that Department 901, that last department, it's like the
Oh, okay.
capital portion, there's 559 for 16-17, and then 150 for 17-18. And then only 171, is that pretty much our CDBG money, then, those two numbers?
CDBG would be budgeted in the
Oh, and
fund.
CDBG.
That's
Yeah.
the city's portion of that project.
Okay.
I did have one question with, because when looking at the streets, the department head for DPW, our director, is that budgeted to come out of any funds right now?
Again, for budget purposes, we lump all cost into the labor line item rather than trying to break out the director in the department head line and the supervisors in the supervisor line. We total up
So it's a
10-mile cost, and then we just allocate it out. We're not trying to be precise, because we don't know what the activity is gonna be. We know what the total cost for the 10-mile staffing is going to be. We just don't know what activities are gonna perform during the year.
Oh, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure.
It's accounted for, yes, absolutely.
So what major and local capital projects were we, planning then?
If you go back to the capital improvement schedule, the one in the back that you're just looking at,
Yeah.
you know, it shows the refuge islands. We have the pavement marking project in there, depending on what discussions happen with the, planning commission.
I just don't get all this money and we have we have nothing scheduled essentially. I mean, forget pavement markings, but
Yeah.
refuse islands, I'm not counting, that's 25 grand.
We have the TIP project going on for Boulder and Roush, but, yeah, I mean, we haven't had any money for major and local. That's been part of our problem. We do have it scheduled out, if you look at the schedule of trying to get enough money to start planning our way through. But that's been our major discussion, is trying to come up with enough money to actually start reconstructing roads.
Right, but is there money that we're getting this year? I mean, can't be paying just all maintenance. I feel like they're,
What'd you say
the
our
money is,
revenue coming in was for just local,
This year or next year?
next year?
does everyone get my question?
Next year, the state money is 765, and the transfer in for major is 975, for a total of $1,740,000.
And how much of that is just budgeting for our 10-mile guys?
On the expenditure side, it is somewhere around 600,000 for staff, for
So
labor.
just for staff, you just took 3/4 of the money we're getting for funding.
Right, but it's not an unusual year, right? I mean, you get my question, right? We're getting all this money for, to do roads, but we're not doing any capital road projects this year or last year. I mean, we did the engineering for Roxana and Johnson like, 2 or 3 years ago. And we still haven't even gotten to those.
Well, keep in mind that in fiscal year 16, we ended the year with $1,700 in local streets. We had no money, and we've been working on trying to build it back up. This year, we will build it up a little bit. Next year, or the budget we're talking about now, will build it up some more, and then we can look at doing some projects.
What's the point of even transferring it if we're not doing a capital project?
To build it up to do a capital project. You can only transfer 50% a year. So you can't
Right.
wait until you're doing the project. You have to transfer it to make the funds available to do the project.
What's
So if we
the,
keep putting that building block together, we get there, get to that.
yeah, what's the fund gonna be at the end of the year then?
At the end of fiscal year 19,
So we're still
the
left with
local street
622.
fund will be about $1,000,001,
Oh, wait.
$1,000,002,
net.
somewhere in there.
Aren't we local streets? I see 622 for net.
Right, and we should be at 664 at the end of this year if everything comes in as budgeted. And then we'll add another 622. So
Oh,
we'll be
we're
at
adding.
a
Oh, okay.
$1,000,002.
Yeah, I'm
Almost $1,000,003, actually, we'll be pushing.
okay.
Do you know what the major fund balance will be?
Excuse me. That would be there.
It's like 884 because we're breaking.
Yeah, but we're gonna use 164. We'll still be over 700,000 in major.
See, I don't get it. We're using 600,000 more in major than than our last full 16-17 versus this budget, 600,000 difference. We're spending more, and then in local, we're spending, well, it's about the same for local. I don't know.
We're
We don't-
trying to come up with anything we can to speed that up.
I mean, we don't have differences in our workforce, right? Same amount of employees, or roughly, right?
Well,
We have
actually,
that-
We've
added-
added,
3?
well, 2 were replacements, so we've added 1 laborer, and then we're adding back the DPW director. So there's additional labor costs that are being factored in.
So if that lady that comes to our council meeting again, I guess we're saying next year, maybe? No, not even.
Well, actually,
Well,
3 years from now, I think. at best.
Realistically, depending on how it happens, we could theoretically do it in fiscal year 19. Instead of building the fund up and then doing it, we could schedule it. It's just a matter of meeting with Pangori and figuring out how to pull that one off. Because they're still, they're doing something with CDBG, right? Trying to figure out how to do 2 years at once.
yeah, they're working on that, so trying to figure out so we could do the whole stretch all at one time versus breaking it up into 2 projects.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, it's something that's, let's call it fluid. Right now, we're budgeting for just the one chunk, but we could change that at a moment's notice.
All right. Did you have any other funds that you really wanted to hit on? I know that you know, if we have those issues with chapter 20,
Yeah, we need to talk chapter 20, we need to talk water sewer. The rest probably are not all that relevant.
Can we, one quick, have we, put in new streetlights? We talked about having capital to put in brand-new streetlights, right, not replacements?
Correct, and we've installed lights at all the locations that people have asked for them. It's just we haven't had people asking for any particular lights. One thing we had asked happen, which of course Mr. McNeil's retired, so it didn't. We were gonna have the police determine where they thought a good spot would be for lights, and have the midnight shift tell us.
Sure.
That project never got off the ground. So right now, there are no requests from citizens for lighting, and we don't have any requests from the police department for any additional lighting. We may be looking at doing something with the decorative lighting along Gratiot and 9 Mile. And we're budgeting, assuming that we will be doing capital, but the reality is if we don't come up with lights to put in, we will be dropping the special assessment because we cannot capture more than we spend.
Yeah.
So we are funded for the new light. Cause I can use some, I don't have any on my street, so.
Call the city manager's office.
I don't have any on my street, and it was a lot of things that was going on criminally that those lights are needed, so.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Sarah offered her light.
One from across the street from my
Oh,
house.
it just goes right into your window?
Yeah, you can take it, you can have it.
I was gonna say the reward for any resident listening right now at 9:40 p.m. would be a streetlight, I guess.
Need
then if
streetlights or a
they
tree.
know just to call, yeah.
Sounds like we got at least one no location.
Yeah,
That was, yeah, my only question for streetlights. Did we, I had one thing about DDA also. We talked about it at the DDA meeting. Like a facade improvement program. And they mixed with, they also talked about scrapping the contractual services they do, which is 20,000 a year, I think is what it said.
Well, that's,
Is that all
that
the-
includes mowing
A whole bunch
and,
of different, yeah.
yeah,
And they were
it-
just talking about snow, right?
right, they were just talking snow, and it's,
If we drop the snow portion, does that maybe, if we did, we were talking about maybe a $10,000 facade program
I
or
was
something?
kinda holding off just to see how the sidewalk program was gonna hit us.
Okay.
But we might have some extra money if it doesn't hit us as bad as I thought it might. So, but yeah, if they drop that, we could take a look. It's hard to budget for winter
Yeah.
snow removal because, you know, I'm taking a guess how many snowstorms we're gonna have and how many times I gotta send him out to do that. So, we might be able to squeeze, you know, 5 or 10 and move it, but I just wanna wait and see what that sidewalk program does.
Okay, and Joe had met with 8MBA, I believe, about because they've done a facade program for a long time. in
Yes,
8 Mile,
yeah,
right?
they have. We actually had one too. Steve Horseman did do one. He just couldn't get anybody to get,
Pony up their
yeah, get
portion.
involved, yeah.
Would we do like 90-10 or something like that, or?
We offered $2,000 assistance, and we had one taker.
How much do they have to,
Whatever the cost was minus the $2,000.
oh, okay, so you could do 4 and it's half off then,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much.
It depends on the size of the building and what kind of facade they put up. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a $2,000 to any DDA property. And like I said, we had one taker.
I feel like this could really kick off, I don't know, now with that was like 10 years ago then when you're talking, or
Oh, yeah, if Steve was still here, yeah.
before
He's
the
not- he's
housing
only been-
crisis, or?
He's only been gone, what, 5?
That's longer than that.
Well,
Because
either way, I
Steve
guess
Buscemi
I'm
was
just
here.
saying the economy's on the
He
upswing,
was-
I would say,
okay.
in general. So maybe people be willing to
Do
put a
something
little
with their
in, and
business.
values, probably buying a place is at its lowest. Oh, that one link I sent out, right, is in Eastpointe was like, what number were we on that list? 110 across the United States for best place to open a small business.
Yeah.
And they took into account like buying a place or rent, I think, and how much getting all your supplies costs and all that.
Yeah, well, and remember, it's commercial buildings within the DDA, so that
Right.
limits your, you know.
There's
your
that
pot
Fitness
of-
19,
But,
and, yeah, a bunch of, yeah,
Popcorn place needs a facade.
right, yeah. So, okay.
Needs a big popcorn on
Ooh.
the top of it.
We'll help them out.
There we go.
Do you want to move on to chapter 20 then?
Yes.
Yes, enlighten us, please.
Well-
It's confusing.
This is controlled by the county. We pay our portion of either a county bond issue or what they're actually doing now is they're going to be doing a lot of capital projects and not bonding them out and just billing the communities. In August, we had a meeting with the drain commissioner, and that was the first time that they revealed to us that they had put together a 20-year capital plan that was heavily loaded in the first 5 years to get caught up on all the things that the previous drain commissioner hadn't done. So what's happening is this drain maintenance number, which was $1,080,000, this year is actually jumping to $1,500,000, and next year will be $2.4 million. And that is just Eastpointe's portion of what they are doing for the Chapadon Basin and the 8.5 mile drain. There's some additional principal and interest payments. As some of the stuff they're bonding, they normally bond any projects on the sewer itself. A lot of the capital is at the Chapadon Basin where they're redoing pumps or they're, they have a laundry list of things they're doing. Like I said, the meeting was in August, which was well after the budget had been sent for this current fiscal year. Otherwise, the millage rate would have been higher for 18 than it is. And because of those numbers, we will be using about $500,000 of the $500,000 fund balance. If everything goes as currently budgeted, we'll have an $800 deficit in this fund at the end of fiscal year 18. For fiscal year 19, the costs are going up, and I know we've been having some email issues, so I don't know if everybody received the one I sent out yesterday. But the county pretty much told us to shove it on the reapportionment. They were supposed to have done that October 1st, and we would have been paying 0% on the new reapportionment for the, they call it the Northeast Storm Relief or something like that.
That was the exact bill I had asked you about, right?
Yeah. So they're charging us this year $73,000, which is about $20,000 more than we had anticipated. And then next year that jumps to $137,000, as well as they are doing a capital project on that particular district, of which we will be paying our 34.39%. Of which, again, it should be 0 based on our usage of it.
How do you, what is this again? How's our usage 0? Sorry.
Well, the original breakdown was set back in the early 80s, I believe.
Okay.
Every once in a while, they'll go do what they call a flow study. And they had done one in 2002, which was, I think, ignored. And then they did a new one in 2000, I want to say 8, maybe 10, somewhere in there. They have to dig up some of the documentation. And they looked at each area. If they reallocated everything percentage-wise based on current flows, we would be 0% of the Northeast Relief drain. Now, our portion of 8.5 mile in Chapadon would go from 54% up to 62%.
Okay.
But this 34% of an entity we don't even use would go away. At the August meeting, the county promised they would implement that October 1st, so we hadn't been paying any bills, we hadn't been doing anything with it. Based on the email I got back yesterday, we can forget that. They expect us to pay our 34%. So that is not in the current budget. The current budget reflects a need, just with the Chapman changes, to go up to an 8.2 or 8.12 mils. And I believe with the additional Northeast relief, it's 8.47 or 8.49, whatever I had in the email.
And so they can just do what they need.
Yes, they can.
Charge, and there's no.
They are the county, and they can do what they want. So we have been, well, God, we had meetings with St. Clair Shores and Roseville back in 2011 and 2012 when they promised they were going to do it. This has been an ongoing battle since the reapportionment study came out, and for whatever reason, the county just doesn't seem interested in making the changes.
I do think that Candace or Brian might be willing to come out to talk to council about, or to, you know, like the EMSD or something like that. If I remember correctly, I do think, to put it in context, we didn't say, because we picked up costs elsewhere, I think Eastpointe does save money overall, but it's not like a huge amount, especially because
Well,
we're not going backwards to collect.
Yes,
like we
and
should.
on the operational end of it, we would have saved a little bit of money, but we would have saved a lot of money on the debt that they started up for the capital project. That's the part that's going to be more expensive than the 73,000 of maintenance versus 52. You know, of course, it's going to 137, but that's kind of minor compared to us paying 34% of a bond issue. And once, you know, they've already started it, they've already started the allocations, and I don't think there's any way to stop that.
And so because right now, it's 16, 17 was 4.1, and now 4.5 this last year.
Yep.
Say it's doubling, it's a little less. But so what's the average home is like a 30,000 taxable value in Eastpointe or something like that. So it's like an extra $120 a year that just, there's really nothing.
We have to collect to give to the county. Yep.
Okay. And it's gonna go higher next year, you said, because.
It should be flat for about 3 years as they do all their capital projects, and then we should see it start to tail off.
Okay,
You know, that's the schedule they gave us with a 20-year capital.
okay.
But it is definitely front-end loaded on the activities that they're spending money on.
Okay. Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions on that?
We should write a strongly worded letter to our drain commissioner, is that what we're saying?
Well,
I
it'd be
spoke
nice to
to-
get her down here and have a one-on-one and not in one of her meetings up there.
Well, yeah, when I talked to her, and then Brian, which is the guy who, I'm not exactly sure, if I think he's an engineer or something like
Yeah.
that, but,
It's kind of her deputy.
yeah, when I spoke to them, kept being under the impression that we weren't getting bills related to that. So, I'm glad I have what you sent, because I just want to be able to show them and say, this is what we're talking about, this is the apportionment, are you going to change it? Because I think they're willing to talk, I think maybe it's getting lost in the shuffle, I'm not sure.
All right, can we invite them?
The mayor wanted to bring them down, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We've been trying to
We've
get
been
a
trying.
one-on-one meeting with her.
She canceled, what, twice?
Yeah.
Oh, just with administration, what about just a council meeting?
Well, no, the mayor was trying to get her to come down for a council
Oh, okay.
meeting, and yeah, she bailed a couple different times.
Council, or, I mean, I think whoever meets, I think they'll be able to hammer it out, because I do think that I'm under the impression she wants to follow those apportionments going forward, but I'm not sure who's doing the billing. I did notice the name on the email was one I hadn't seen before.
He's the one that does all the billings. He does the debt, he does billings for maintenance. Yeah, Bruce Manning is the guy where I get all my information from. He'd be my counterpart for the Drain Commission.
All right, is there any other questions on drains?
They're expensive.
Oh, yes, they are.
The next one on here is capital improvement.
That's just a sidewalk program.
Yeah.
There's not much there. We bill whatever we pour, yeah.
What, oh, wait. Maybe this isn't the appropriate time, but is there any, I'm thinking solar or any sort of green, is there any where we can use that? I just always imagine above our reservoir that takes up all that nice space with a lot of grass back there. Can we save money in the long run? Well, I mean, we definitely can, because I did this on my house. But can we look at doing a solar project or something like that that helps offset going forward? And it's going green, of course.
Actually, I was only half joking when I was talking with the folks from DPW that if Ford's eliminating all their passenger vehicles, it's because the hybrids provide the efficiency that the small cars used to, that we put the solar panels on the reservoir, get all these electric vehicles over at 10 Mile, and we just charge them all up. But like I said, I was only half joking. I don't have a problem doing something like that. In fact, I told them we're gonna get one of the Tesla semis to be a dump truck. But I don't think we can afford that.
I think Mr. Cotton has a background in some of that. He's
Yeah.
done over in Holland.
He's
And
got a
was
Volt.
Yeah.
He was talking about sitting down and talking to us about it when he has a chance,
Okay.
yeah.
so.
Let's
Yeah, it's
brainstorm
not
that.
a foreign concept, so.
And even just a little at a time or something, if we can, I mean, I'm sure you can do little at a time somehow, a few panels and it'll.
It's just,
I don't know.
does the capital expense ever get, what's the years to pay off?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't really much worth it, but I'll,
We're
But
talking
the cost of the
about,
panels have dropped significantly. So
Probably, yeah,
It's
'cause-
now getting to the point where it's becoming worth it. So,
Especially on a building like the City Hall, where we're gonna be here for a while, in this building. You know, if it's a building that might have to be eventually changed, then it might not be worth putting the money into.
they did look at that at one point when they built it. You got a 17,000 square foot building and
need a good south-facing roof.
it wasn't cost effective. It was like more than 25-year payback or something on it. It was extremely high, so that's almost why they didn't look at, what's the thing underneath?
Geothermal.
Geothermal.
We actually had talked about that, and it was not cost-effective at the time, but that was
'Cause you got,
2007.
yeah, I mean, you had a huge parking lot. It would work perfect, but it just wasn't cost effective.
They're doing that at the state capitol now.
Geothermal?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can talk to Mike Malone a little bit too. He has done some of those projects, so he
Okay.
might have some experience.
Do you want to talk about tax reversion?
That's just a guess at how much it's gonna cost us to buy the properties. Last year it dropped, what did we end up with, 10 or 12 parcels? It wasn't much at all.
12, yeah.
And I've talked to the county, it should be even less this year. They don't have a final list, but the number going through tax reversion is declining across the county, which is good news.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just kind of designed to be an in and out for right now.
Mike, did you want to talk about your idea for them? It'd probably make us,
I mean, I think that's a policy issue. The only way it would be tied in here is if we needed to put money into the fund to do like the improvements that went in line with that policy,
Right.
but maybe we'll have that policy hammered out before the final budget and be able to
Right.
accommodate for it.
do we know
Yeah.
how many houses this year?
No, we have not seen a list. They normally, even though the tax reversion cutoff date is March 1st, they usually work through June 1st on payment plans.
Okay.
So it'll be mid to late June before we see the list.
Okay.
And remember, out of the 12 last year, I think half or just under half were vacant property.
Well, Yeah, there was
Oh.
2 that had to be demoed, so
Vacant
by the time they were demoed, we had half were vacant.
Yeah. Well, yeah, some of those that we demoed were really bad.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I haven't even seen any preliminary, normally I get something in January that has kind of a preliminary list, and they did not send that out this year.
Okay.
All right, did you want to talk about rubbish?
Yeah, I mean, rubbish is, we're keeping the fee the same. What we do here is we budget for the GFL contract, any related cost for personnel, and then any excess money we put into that line called refuge disposal landfill. It's $130,000. That's basically money that we're setting aside for the landfill closure. We know we have exposure for all the disposal authority landfills. But the idea is that we will keep this fund at a break even. So we're only setting aside enough to keep this at a 0. And when the cost of the rubbish actually matches the revenues, we won't set any more money aside. But the way we have it structured, we will be able to keep the $10.86 a month for the full 10-year contract. And at the end, we already have $1 million, $1 million, $2 million, something like that set aside for the landfill cost. So this is a very healthy fund. In spite of the accounting, excuse me, man, getting dry throat here. In spite of the accounting calculations you see at the bottom. So we budget the way we're going to do operations, but every year we have to record our portion of the disposal authority, which is why you see it's a negative fund balance, but the state does not consider it to be a deficit because of the reason that is a negative fund balance. So it's just kind of, the actuals are the full accounting, the budget is operational.
So I think that, so the actual contract expires at the end of next month, though, for GFL.
Actually,
It was extended.
I'm under the impression that I was told that the acting manager extended it back in January.
January, February timeframe.
Because I asked him, should I be bidding this out, and he told me no, or talking about it.
It sounded to me like there was confusion over that, but I don't think a contract should be extended without council
Especially
approval.
for 5 years?
I think the way it was described to us is it was in that contract that the city manager could renew it without our approval.
What?
That's what I heard. That's the way it was
Yeah,
described
it was
to me.
approved as a 5-year contract with a 5-year extension.
What's the maximum
Yeah, the
contract
parties
you
would
can
have
do
to agree to
legally?
the extension.
Isn't
And
there a
they
limit
did,
for,
so-
for
the city of
government?
Eastpointe?
Well, I would argue that we did not.
Well, I just said they did.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, I think 5's would be the maximum, but I thought it was more like 3.
Well, under the ordinance for a rubbish or a DPW contract, you go up to 5. Remember, we went back to have that changed because we were afraid if we had only a 3-year cap, the cost of, that was back when we were getting ready to bid this out the last time. If we hadn't made that change.
It was an ordinance change, wasn't it, Randy?
Yeah, actually went to a vote of the people.
Yeah, as a charter amendment.
As a charter
That's
amendment.
right.
We were afraid if we at least didn't have the 5 years in there, that it would be so expensive with a 3-year, because they capitalize how they do that. So we had the charter changed to allow us to go 5 years on a rubbish. I think you called it a DPW contract or something like that. So we actually had to do that because of, capping it at 3
Back in
was.
2013, 2014?
Yeah, it was just recently, it was just before we did this last contract. We had to get that in place before we bid it.
Well, just in light of what's gone on with the company, I'm extremely uncomfortable, especially with it just magically extending for 5 more years and not going out to bid, both of those combined. I don't, and how come we didn't even get a simple email then? I don't recall that, because we talked about it.
Well, we didn't either.
Well, GFL came to our meeting just, a couple meetings ago.
It had already been extended, my understanding, it was already extended by the time they came to the meeting.
And that didn't come up in our meeting.
And that would be the acting city manager at the time that you'd have to have a conversation with.
I mean, that's not, I kind of want to try to stay on budget just because it's getting late. Maybe that would be an appropriate thing to ask Ryan to
Well,
take a look at, because going forward, depending on what we decide to do, I think we do have to act one way or another, because I would want to, if we stayed with them, that in council should ratify the contract, just to make a point that we're the
Right.
party to the contract, so we have to agree to it.
yeah.
In the alternative, trying to go out to bid or something might be a mess. I don't know if I'd support that, but I mean, we should at least have the
Can we just
discussion.
push out what we did 5 years ago and say, hey, bid on this again? I'd assume companies are probably just ready to put their bid, I mean, there's not too many.
It's probably the same ones that bid the last time. It's just, you know, you look at what the increase would be, whatever the unit price is it worth? I know that one of the Grosse Points did, and they got a 25% increase?
25% increase and still ended up with GFL.
Well,
So,
to,
I mean,
Instead of
it's
doing the
a crapshoot,
extension.
but,
Well,
we
for-
can do either or.
for me, I mean, this is why GFL has every contract, is because they came in way under what anyone else could even bid. But to me, it's just more a matter of, I mean, their CEO's going to prison for, you know,
That's
bribing
Rizzo.
people.
That's Rizzo, not GFL.
Okay, we're splitting hairs again, I know.
No, huh? GFL is a separate,
I don't
a
think.
separate company.
I don't think they were the lowest bid. I mean,
Yeah, they
I
were.
wasn't on council
Well,
then.
absolutely, they were.
Were they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they were slightly a little bit higher, but they gave us the garbage cans, so it like offset the cost. But I thought there was some pretty
Well,
competitive
and
bidding
so
going on.
what did Roseville do? Because we have some sort of deal with Roseville too, where they like bid us together or something like that.
We were going to try to do that. We were gonna try to bid it the last time with the St. Clair Shores, Roseville, and Eastpointe, and they told us they didn't wanna do that. They went on their own.
And
was
sorry,
the-
Mike, I'm not trying to get off topic, but there's very limited time before June 30 when the contract is supposed to end. That's all. So I don't know. I mean, I would, does not the rest of council doesn't want to see this go out to bid?
If it goes out to bid though, then they could increase their bid also. You know what I'm saying? I think we're taking a chance of them coming back with a new bid that's higher than what we.
Well, how's the 5-year renewal work? Can we just renew it before June 30 then?
Well,
You could
So
take whatever you can take a look at the
a
unit
win-win
prices.
then.
is it the, well,
If you bid it, you're not gonna be able to renew it. No, I didn't understand. If you're gonna bid, you gotta bid it. If you're gonna renew
You
it,
actually
you
would
gotta
have to
renew it.
cancel the GFL and then bid it out.
Right.
You don't get to bid it out and say, forget that, we're gonna keep the extension.
Yeah, you're committed if we go to bid.
well,
I mean, I guess what
Does it
he's saying
depend?
is if we keep not bidding, they can keep charging us whatever they want.
Well, it's a
No.
fixed, it was a
They have a-
fixed price
They have
contract.
a fixed contract for the
We know
second
what our
5
price is
years,
for the next
and
5
we know what
years.
that
It was
is.
from the last 5 years, it's the same thing.
They basically, I think they raised it 1 cent
For
per whatever the unit
I
price
think that
is.
was even a different option. I think it was when I last looked at it, recall it was the same for the next.
Yeah,
5 years.
it's minimal. I don't even think they changed their numbers for the,
there's
First
a couple years
three-
it was flat. and
yeah,
there's
it's flat for 2
some minor
years
increases.
and a minor increase on year 3. And then
I
it's
mean,
flat
this seems
again.
like a strange way of getting around the 5-year bid. I mean, it's not really at that point then. You know what I'm saying? If there's a 5-year renewal built into your
Well,
5-year bid.
It's built in as a 5-year and then a 5-year. It's not a 10-year, so, or a 6-year. You actually have to approve moving to the next 5 years, so.
well, regardless, I don't think I don't think it'd be appropriate to make a decision tonight on something like that, going to a budget workshop and then making a decision to go out to bid on something. I think we have to wait at least until next week, if we
Put it
want
on
to
the
discuss
agenda.
that.
Yeah, let's discuss it next week. then.
Which
At
I'm
least
fine with
I'd like
that.
to.
But,
All right, fair enough.
I can pull the numbers so you can see, you know, what the numbers would be from the first 5 years to the second 5 years. We have that.
And if we can find out about this magical January thing,
That, I've asked twice about it, whether I should be going out to bid, and that's what I was told.
I'm just thinking if we're gonna do negotiations and not bid, which we're supposed to do, why we can't lower, you know, their rates, since if we're gonna stick with them, why can't we try to get it lower?
Because the contract is specific, you're just extending the contract. You can't just start negotiating, those rates are there. So all you're doing is extending, you're agreeing to go to the next one. If you start negotiating, you gotta rebid it.
I think I know, those next 5 years are in the
In the-
contract.
in the contract.
Already, like
Yeah.
they said, if you renew for 5 years, it's these, like, so it's already, that's why I'm saying it's essentially a 10-year,
Yeah, it's a 10-year contract.
really. It, you know,
We got 10-year pricing. That is true.
because if you can't go out to bid again, I mean, we could spy on neighboring cities' bids. I don't know, you're saying Grosse Pointe just did it or something?
Yeah,
See
one of the
what those
Grosse
numbers
Pointes
are.
just did it, that's what we heard.
And see what those numbers are, but, you know, otherwise our hands are almost tied, yeah, then they'll just up their,
If they know the price has gone up for every other company, they're gonna come up higher.
Right.
The crapshoot
But, you know, if
is,
their prices are, you know, from 5 years ago.
do you
or
bid it
higher.
and get the same company, but you go up 20%, or, you know?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. It's a coin flip. But let me grab those numbers so you can at least see them.
Well, in that the case, all companies gonna do that, and we're never gonna bid, because people wanna keep it the same price if you don't go out and bid.
No, at the
right?
end of this second series of 5 years, you would have to bid it. There's no extension past that point.
Okay.
So you'd be forced at that point to put a complete bid together.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
yeah.
If we could get through water and sewer, I don't think
Yeah.
there's much left after
Water and
that.
sewer, and then I hope the rest.
I can't do another night
I thought we
tonight.
could've did that on a no different day, all the water on one day and all the other stuff on the, but go ahead.
I think basically water sewer is rates.
It's,
I think that's your
yeah.
probably your whole conversation.
The water sewer rates that are being proposed, of course, you have to find them. The overall rate increase is 3.2% this year. Originally, there was no other rates that were going to be changed, but as my email stated, that 33 cents of station maintenance really needs to increase to about 90 cents a month. Not a huge dollar, but we're going to have to make a tweak to that one.
can you explain the station maintenance again? I think I read what you're talking about, but, what's the
That's a fee that we charge to pay for the Northeast Relief Sewer
okay, that's,
maintenance. And so we collect it, give it to the county, collect it, give it to the county.
that's not part of the chapter 20 then? Because you were
Correct.
saying.
Correct. The debt portion will be part of Chapter 20,
Okay.
but the operation is not.
Ah.
And so we've been collecting this 33 cents since the early 80s to pay for that.
And this is for the 0%?
What should be zero, yes, yes. But yeah, to pay for the $137,000 instead of the 52 that was budgeted, it would have to go up to about 90 cents per month. So that's a tweak that will have to be made. One thing with the water is we did do a rate change, or I should say, we negotiated a change in the peak hour and max day volumes with the Great Lakes Water Authority, which will result in a slight drop in our water purchase cost. Of course, most of our cost for water is now fixed, so it has less impact than we had hoped for. And that's one of the reasons that the rates were able to stay down at 3.2% for this year. We're still projecting to raise, where is it? $4,260,000 in the Ready to Serve, which is used for the capital projects. What do we got for capital? So yeah, we've got water main on Donald from Topher to Stevens. We have sewer rehab on Schroeder to the east city limits. There's some sewer line and rehabilitation. What else we got hanging out here? Yeah, that's about it. So we got three seven of projects that are in the capital, as well as things that we know are gonna happen, like, the catch basin repairs. We had been looking at bidding that out as a project, but the, folks on 10 Mile actually have stepped up to the plate, and they're gonna do a lot of it in-house now that they have staffing and people that, wanna show up and work. That's always a good thing. So hopefully we can save some money on the catch basin, rehabs, rebuilds, and get more of them done. So, I don't know, what else do you wanna talk about on water sewer?
I think this again, for me, kind of feels like the major and local roads where we're raising all kinds of money. I know I see we've got almost the amount planned that you said. You said the Ready to Serve's raising, what, 4 million?
4.2 million
And we're doing 3.7?
in specific projects, yep.
But then also, explain how, like from 2 years ago to last year, where's that extra amount that we're getting for GLWA and SEMSD? We're raising like another million each or whatever it was in those, but our bill was not going up nearly that much. I know there's some other costs
Well,
associated, but it's not nearly as much as.
Again, it goes back to those increases came in prior years after the budgets had been set, and they came in greater than we had anticipated. So what was happening is for 3 years in a row, our rates were not increased sufficient to cover the increases that came in. We always, I shouldn't say always, as a general rule, the rates come in from Great Lakes Water Authority after our budget's complete.
I get that. Our metered water sales were 2.8 million in 16-17. So before we did our huge increase last year, 2.8 million we raised for metered water sales. I'm on page 43. Everyone.
Yeah.
But then we're only paying GLWA 1.5 million.
Well, again, it's all the labor. It's the guys going out fixing water main breaks. That's not capital, that's maintenance. It's everything. If you look at the cost of the water system, it's water cost in fiscal year 17, it was $5,984,000. You got to back off some of the accounting adjustments, like the $1.3 million for retirement, and you back out depreciation of $800,000. The water system cost us $3.9 million in fiscal year 17, and we raised $2.8 million in revenues. It's just the cost of running the system. On the sewer side, $9,776,000 for sewer. You back off $1 million worth of depreciation. There's a sanitary district adjustment in there. There's $1.3 million for retirement. So $1.3 million, another $1 million, so 2.3. The sewer side cost us $7.4 million to operate that during fiscal year 17, and we raised $6,325,000. That's the kind of thing that caused the huge increases. That happened 3 years in a row, where we had set the rates, assuming that Great Lakes was going to do what they said they were going to do, and then they didn't.
Yeah, but the GLWA increase and the SEMSD then increase is, to me, negligible in this discussion, though, because.
Well, you're looking at 17 going forward. You got to go back to 13, 14, in that time frame, and look at the increases since then. And those are the increases that we've been trying to play catch up and get the rates in line with what it actually costs to run this thing. We lost money in the water sewer system for 3 years in a row because the budgeted rates were set before the increases were sent across to us.
But you're saying a lot of it's maintenance too, though. That's not the rates that GLWA or SEMSD
Well,
would be
on the sewer side, you've got 6.3, no, I'm looking at the wrong one. 45, where's 45? There we are. $6.2 million for sewage treatment,
Where are you on? Which?
page 45.
Okay. Yeah, about 10 from the bottom.
If we did nothing else, we need $6.2 million for sewer,
Right.
just to cover that. The water side is different. The water is the smallest part of the cost of water, the water purchase. Everything else is tied into the labor that goes into fixing water main breaks, and all of the maintenance activities that go on there. If I remember correctly, sewage from sanitary district is about 80% of the sewer cost, where the water purchases is maybe 30% of the cost of the water. It's delivering the water to the home and the system, maintaining the system to get it there, that's the big cost. And that doesn't even include the capital aspect of putting new stuff in.
Okay. And so in the budget message on page 132 I had, you said the sanitary district passed on 5%. Is that correct?
That's what is budgeted. We have not received the sanitary district numbers yet.
Which line item? Because I thought I found the line item that would be.
That would be the $6,674,000.
Yeah, so let's see, is that, hold on. Yeah, that's only a 2.4% increase. Why did you budget for 2.4 instead of 5?
This 5 may have been from the original budget, not the amended budget. I'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay. And then I guess my other question was, what about the $4,075,000 that was loaned to the water sewer fund? How are-
From the general fund, at the end of last year, yeah.
How are we paying that back, or what are we doing?
It's being paid back as the cash comes in this year. When we basically canceled all capital to get the fund built back up. The current balance in water sewer at the end of April is, instead of a negative 4.3 million, it's down to 1.7 million. When we get the delinquent tax money from the county, that'll be another 600,000, and then the balance should come in the next couple months as we collect the bills, just regular billings. We should be fairly close to zero at the end of fiscal year.
So what
It's
was
too
that?
late. What are we in?
for?
Fiscal year 18, 17. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
So what was that for, and is that not factored into then the rates we sent? Is this a one-time thing, or like what, I didn't,
The reason we went negative is the reason that we had to do the rate increase. We were setting rates, then we were getting increases greater than we had projected. And unless we were gonna do a mid-year rate change, we basically were losing money every year. We tried to scale back on the capital projects as quick as possible, but we had too many in the pipeline to actually stop. They'd already been bid out and awarded. So we had to finish the capital projects that had already been approved, basically get through this year with the rate increase, stop all capital for this year, and get the fund back to where it's not in a deficit on the cash aspect.
So our increase rate brought in like about 3 million more than the previous year. Is that what it was, if I recall? Like between water and sewer? Thought, or no, for the, let me think, for the ready to serve?
Yeah, because you can't count that, so that's 13. Yeah, actually about $3.4 million revenue increase.
And so the 4 million, so if we stay with the rates you're suggesting, that 4 million's just the 1 year, one time.
It's a one-year catch-up on the cash side, correct. And then we're back to just running normal.
Okay. Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Did anyone else?
No.
No, I do think that visiting the rate might be something that we can do, knowing that we're kind of getting close to being out of a deficit. I think we're still 200 grand or something like that at the end of next year. At the end of next year's fiscal year, we get close to being almost even, right?
Well, I'm looking at it from a cash perspective. I just want to get to, where we don't have negative cash at the end of the fiscal year. Where do you see the 200,000?
I thought that we still had a deficit at the end of the next fiscal year, and I thought it was something like that. Maybe I'm incorrect.
Okay. And, well, and see, again, part of it is just the way, it's an enterprise fund, so it's accounted for different than all of the other funds. I mean, when you have assets that you're depreciating and unfunded pension liabilities that get recorded, it gets interesting trying to explain it. Those are only show up in your actual end of it. I prefer to look at it from a cash flow perspective of, are we generating enough cash from operations to pay the bills?
All right. Did anyone have any other questions?
Well, my reason essentially, I guess, for asking all those is I still feel the same way I did last year, where rates should not be as high as they are. Obviously, Mr. Blum begs to differ. But
I don't know
that's
how
why
you
I'm
drop
asking
the cost of running the system. I mean, you can't stop water mains from breaking, and
The math, I don't know, the math just does not seem to make sense.
All right.
I don't think.
We think we talked about motor pool already.
Yeah. The rest of them are, not really that big of a deal.
We just always hope nothing for the death benefit, right?
Yeah.
Depends on how
or do we-
Mr. Blum looks at it. He looks at it
happy to
as he's
pay out
got
on
death
the death
benefit, but he
benefit.
gets health care back or something.
The only, and I'm not gonna get into it right now, but just, did we ever explore doing a bond or something like that to fund some of those things?
we're still looking into the possibility of doing that. I don't know that I would bond out healthcare, just because healthcare is gonna keep going through the roof, and we're gonna have to address it in some form or fashion. Bonding isn't ever gonna take care of it. Floating a bond and putting the money into the pension system, that makes a lot more sense. Still a little bit of risk, another 2008 happens, and now you got a MERS payment plus a bond payment. But I'm a little more comfortable with that concept.
I know that one other community had done it that Plant Moran mentioned. I don't think I ever got the name of that
Yeah.
city. I don't know if you looked at that to see if they.
There was a few different cities that did. There's actually legislation that you can bond. There's specific legislation for bonding pension. But you have to have a AA rating to be able to do it. And ours is only an A+. So we don't qualify under the legislation. What we would have to do is float a general obligation bond and then just transfer the money into the pension, but it wouldn't technically be a pension bond under the legislative rules. And we have plenty of bonding capacity. We still have $51 million that we could bond before the state would care.
Is that I mean, is the difference that it would count to whether or not you're underfunded?
Yeah, we put 20 million into the pension, we would get up probably around the 80 to 85% funded, which would be huge in our case. And that's really one of the reasons that it's something worth looking at.
Yeah, I would like to look at doing that, because if we have the credit to do it and we can get those funds, pension funded and save money by doing it that way.
You give me my controller and I'll have time to go to get a bond.
Negotiations at 10:30.
Get us that bond, you'll get your.
Good comeback.
All right. Is there anything else that anyone else wanted to ask?
I hope not. Just say motion to adjourn real quick. No.
Well, first, hearing of the public. Would anyone like to be heard?
I think they went to bed.
Luckily, we can't hear them through the
Yeah.
Comcast.
They're like yelling at us from home.
Seeing none, mayor and council reports. Ms. Lucido.
I just wish Mayor Pixie a speedy recovery, and hopefully we'll see her on Tuesday.
Councilman Owens.
I have some good news. I started a 4-H program at Eastpointe. I talked to the superintendent. We had like a 3-hour meeting yesterday, and he said that I can use the school and the swimming pool, and they also have they have money in the schools to help me fund the 4-H program, $130,000. So right now I'm just putting that together, so getting the kids and the mentors and things like that. So just working on doing the things that I said I was going to bring to Eastpointe, and that's the youth programs and things like that. So I got that started. I just need the help. So if anybody out there want to be a mentor, a volunteer, got some kids, it's $20 a year per child. Past 3 kids, the other kids are free. So if you got any kids, you want to be a volunteer, anybody that know different projects or programming that you want to add to the 4-H, just let me know. Actually, the guy who came up here, and Mr. Langston Moore, who came up here and talked about more kids having something to do, I actually asked him to come out and talk to the 4-H program, because he seemed like he was really driven in helping the kids, as I am. And so I asked him to come out to the meeting, and he came out to Warren meeting, to the 4-H program, and he's the head leader, and I told him I'll just be under him and help him with whatever he needs. And so I just need more people in the city of Eastpointe that want to do something to come up and let me know, let any of the council members know, and we'll help direct you in doing the things that need to be done. Because obviously we can't do it all, but if you guys want to help us, bring those things to Eastpointe, we can help you do it. So that's all I got.
Mr. DeMonico.
It sounds great, Monique. And as Sarah said, hopefully Suzanne can make it out Tuesday. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out until 10:30 p.m. Too bad we should have made Carol stay.
Next year, library is at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
We'd have to wake her up probably.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you to all the department heads for coming out and bearing with it. No, they're probably not listening now, but for letting us get this done in one night. I'm glad we got through everything. So that's all. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have support? Please call the roll.
Don't hesitate now. Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 10:32.